Welcome to the Easton School Committee meeting of Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. This is a Zoom meeting in keeping with the ongoing emergency order from Governor Charlie Baker to limit gatherings and maximize social distancing, and under legislation passed to address remote board meetings during the emergency declaration. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. You can watch this on Facebook Live. And if you do have questions and you're on this meeting and you type a question into the Q&A, please put your name and address first and then your question. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Okay. First up, approval of Lucini contract addendum, regular contract, in-district special education contract, and FY21 contract extension option. Dr. Cabral.
Thank you. Director of Operations is here, and he can speak to the contract and answer any questions you might have. This is Lucini, our transportation provider for our general education and our in-district special education transportation. David?
Yep. So these are all Lucini contracts. We did get the sped contract here.
David, you have a lot of feedback. I don't know why. It's very hard to hear you. David?
So we should have that this week. Unfortunately, Bill had death in the family, so
I just tried to mute him and it isn't working.
David.
We do have the other contracts now.
Tracy, can you text him?
Okay.
Also, waiting to be let into the meeting.
Oh, okay.
David, I don't know if you can hear us. We couldn't hear anything. So,
can you hear me now? No.
It's okay. I'll translate for you. I have a feeling I know what you said, so I'll jump in. So we have our vendor transportation contract. Not only do we have the contract itself, but we're adding an extension. There was an optional third-year extension on that, so we are adding that. And then finally, there's a third piece you see, and that's the contract for the addendum to the spring, where we had some limited use of buses, and we were able to negotiate that part of the contract. So those are the three sections that you have. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay. All right. There's a lot of papers. Go ahead, Caroline.
I'm sorry, Leisha, I was trying to adjust something on my iPad when I missed the last part about, what happened in the spring. Is it very specifically addressed that if some sort of obstacle occurs that prevents us from having our school in person during part or even more than part of the year, are we not liable for that? I read something that implied that, but I didn't hear exactly what you said just now. So if you could just address that particular issue.
Yes, because the conditions are so unique and we don't know if there are different ways that we can utilize the bus drivers. For example, we're talking about perhaps being flexible and using more buses for things like sporting events so that we can distance the students, and that accounts perhaps for the 10 days in the beginning of the year. So we're talking with them, and we need to negotiate each thing individually because each thing is very different. And so we don't have something in there about when school is not in session, but we will negotiate it in good faith, just like we did this time around.
Well, Okay, so there really is, it's not addressed at all in the contract. So is the assumption that we are liable for the entire year of the contract should something prevent us from having?
No, it wasn't in the
something-
contract this last time around. And we were able to negotiate that. It is in the law right now. The legislation was changed during this crisis. The law originally was you couldn't pay for services not rendered, but now it is that they negotiate with the superintendent. And so we will negotiate anytime school's not in session. But
It doesn't give us much leverage then. I mean, I
well,
know we negotiated, but you
it
know.
does in the
we
sense that
certainly
they
did.
don't get paid. We don't pay them up front.
Not upfront,
Mm-mm.
but the prior negotiation did involve some liability for the school district. I guess there's just no way to ensure that we have a contract otherwise. Okay, I just wanted to know if
Yeah,
that was addressed because
there's no provision for a zero payment because there are ongoing costs that need to be maintained, and we were very meticulous in parceling those out when we amended the contract. It's just not possible to do zero and maintain a contract because of ongoing. They have an office, they have insurance, that there are different items that need to be kept intact, especially if you don't know if you're going to be coming back, which was exactly the case this past spring.
okay, thank you.
So we're looking, I mean, it says approval of Lucini contract addendum. I see three, one might be the special education one. In district special education, okay. So so the first one I see is $147,893. One of them doesn't have oh yes, it does. The total contract price, oh, that's third year. $1,471,500. I'm just confused and then there's the regular contract. So first year is $1,377,000. Second year is the same. And third year option year is $1,471,500, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's what we're voting on those three. And that's for a regular year, 170 days of transportation, correct?
It's 180 days, yes. It's a 180-day contract. It's a 3-year
Okay.
contract, so we always think they're going to be 180 days.
Oh, okay. So this year they kind of get, if they do transport for 170 days, then they're getting 10 days of transportation funds. Okay. So then what's the addendum? I'm confused, that's all. David, can you tell me what the addendum is? Or Leisha,
I don't think
somebody?
he's here.
Okay.
I don't think he's on here. I'm not sure which one you're looking at, but we have the special
all three
education.
in front of me.
I'm sorry.
I have all three in front of me. Go ahead, that's special.
Hello,
ed
Lisa.
one.
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, yes.
There we go.
Good job, David.
Hello, David.
It only took like 100 times. Holy cow. Sorry about that, ladies. I'm
That's
really
okay.
sorry about that.
That's okay. I think we're good. We're just answering questions now. So Nancy
Yes,
was
so-
just asking what the addendum was.
Yeah, so basically there's, we weren't able to get the in-district special education contract because Bill Lucini had a death in the family. So we only have 4 of the contracts. I'll bring the special ed in-district one in next week to that meeting. Hopefully Bill will be able to sign it. So we basically have the contract addendum. I think I heard Leisha speaking to this. So this was something that the state told all districts that we had to negotiate with the bus companies. And so Leisha did a great job with some of the other local school districts in negotiating a 30% payment to Lucini's. So that was a payment from March until June. So for the in-district students, that 30% ended up being $34,380. And then for the regular transportation from March until the end of June, based on the 30%, came out to $147,893.50. So that was for the contract addendum related to the 19-20 school year and by us ending in March. In addition to that, there's another contract that's in there kind of jumping around because it is kind of confusing. There's a contract addendum to our regular contract because part of the negotiation, our original regular transportation contract, which starts in September, was going to be a 2-year contract with a 1-year option. And the 1-year option was tied in because we're anticipating the new school. We wanted some flexibility to negotiate the number of buses. But I think with all the stopgap measures that are in the current contract, I think we can still negotiate that if we want to change the start times and the bus runs and stuff. But anyways, to make a long story short, in order to get Lucini to agree to the 30% payment, we agreed that we would actually give them the contract extension now as part of their, as part of the change. So basically, instead of a 2-year contract with a 1-year option for the fiscal year 21, which starts in September, we ended up, we want to exercise our right to extend that contract for the 3rd year. So there's kind of a lot of moving targets. I don't know if I explained that clearly enough, but it is kind of confusing.
Yeah, we weren't sure that we would be able to have an open negotiation in the 3rd year. And that's the year where we're anticipating the school's going to open. And we wanted to be able to have that flexibility. So, so I was able to negotiate with Lucini that they would have that conversation with us and they would be open. And it is in the contract saying that we can change the number of buses and it will be charged differently. And that's a result of that conversation. So we will be able to have that conversation that year. And so we added the 3rd year to the contract.
Yeah, so typically we would perhaps exercise our right maybe after the 1st year or 2nd year, but we're looking to exercise our right, right out of the gate. We actually checked with our attorney, and the attorney said that we could do this as long as, and he wrote up the addendum for us. So it is approved on his end, and we really just need the school committee's approval. Again, it's tied into the closing of the school year back in March. That's kind of a package deal.
Any questions?
Just to,
Michelle?
Thank you. And
Michelle?
I apologize if I missed this. So the contract is for 180 days, but we really only have 170 this year. And I think I heard Leisha say that that difference of money, first, do we have a dollar amount what those 10 days are worth?
No, I mean, I know what it is, but I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
I can certainly get it for you.
Do we have in writing somewhere that I heard you say something about using those buses or that money allotment for things like maybe sports and whatnot?
Yes.
Is that in writing anywhere that that's what that money would be used for, and we need to figure out those costs, or are we just?
No, we have in the contract that we can negotiate the contract or elements of it as they come up, but this happened after the contract was drafted, checked by attorneys and sent to Lucini.
Yeah, I also
wonder
think,
if we want
Michelle.
something in writing about that. That's
Yeah,
gotta
so
be
Michelle.
a money.
So I
Go
think,
ahead,
we can
David.
look
We're
at
not
answer that
paying them
question.
for those 10 days. We're not paying them for that. We're going to use that money. So we just don't pay them. They don't have it up front. We just won't pay them for that. And then when we come to need extra buses for transportation, we use the money to pay for it for that.
That's what I was asking. Is it in writing that we don't have to pay for those 10 days unless
No, we
include
only
them in
pay
what
for
they-
services rendered. That's a state law, unless negotiated differently by me. So it's the state law. It doesn't have to be stated as such in the contract.
And Michelle, it's about $7,600 a day.
Thank you.
That was pretty good.
Jen,
The math
She's
teacher.
the math teacher.
Yeah, I guess so. That was really good.
Jen has a question.
Yeah, so can you just remind me, there were no other responses to our bid, right?
There was
Oh, so
one.
we
It
did-
was a lot more. A lot more.
Okay.
Like hundreds of thousands more.
But this was the best deal.
No question about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically you have to, you put it out to bid, you follow chapter 30B, which is the bidding guidelines. And so we got responses. So Lucini was the lowest price who's actually able to perform the work. They had all the insurance. They they turned in all the appropriate paperwork. So it's very regimented as far as what the process is. So Lucini met all the guidelines. They were the lowest bidder. And we're actually glad that Lucini is the lowest bidder in some ways, because we've worked with Lucini for several years since I've been here. They've always been very accommodating. And whenever we've had a problem, we've had meetings with them and worked it all out. So I actually, in some ways, especially under this coronavirus situation, I'd rather have a company that we're familiar with than have a brand new company that we're all not really familiar, especially with some of the bus stops that are going to have to be moved around and the changes in the start times and all that kind of stuff. I just think that this year is really good that we have a vendor who's familiar with the school district.
So the 147,000 and the 34,000 is coming out of the FY20 budget. And then that 1,377,000 is coming out of the FY21 budget, correct?
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, and Leisha, you said that that third option year, we can renegotiate that, because aren't we expecting that there'll be a lot more walkers to the new Blanche Ames Elementary School?
Well, no, because the people who live near Moreau and Center will not be able to walk to the campus. It's the same number of residents that can walk there, even though there are more students going there.
I see what you're saying, okay. Well, there's kids that go to Morrow Hall now that take a bus because it's 138, but if they're going to Spooner Street, they can walk.
Yeah, there
So,
might be some, but
okay.
we're not anticipating, you know,
A lot.
two schools worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions? Do I have a motion? Do we have to do each one individual, or can we just do them all together?
So however you'd like to do it, you're the
What would you
chairperson.
like, David? What would you like, David? What would you like?
I think it's better if you do it individually, because then
Okay.
it's kind of a record of it, but it's whatever way you want to do it.
So there's one on here that we don't have yet, right? And that is no,
In district
we have
sped, we
them
don't
all,
have.
right?
Yeah, so I
Oh,
can
we
tell
have
you.
the one from last year. Right, we have the one from, okay. So do I have a motion to approve the Lucini contract addendum for fiscal year 2020?
So moved, Wiseman.
Star second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the regular contract for 3 years with the ability to renegotiate the third year from Lucini Bus Lines?
Oh, hold on one second, Nancy. I think what you want to do on the,
Yes.
on the second one, you want to make a motion to approve the regular contract with Lucini Transportation starting in fiscal year 20 for 2 years. And then I think a separate motion would be a motion to exercise your right to extend the contract for a third year for Lucini. So there's two separate
So
motions.
moved.
You have to.
Wait, when you say, David, when you say fiscal year 20,
Well,
that
fiscal
is
year 21,
actually
we're in
nine-
21.
it's 21, yeah.
Yes,
Fiscal year
correct.
21 and 22
Yep.
with the third year, okay.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, my
wanted to-
bad. Sorry about that.
So
I was
you
using my
can't
school committee skills.
Okay, so
Sorry about
Nancy,
that.
you have to make that amendment to your motion.
Okay,
So I'm in that
All right.
motion. Can I be on two school committees? I don't know about that.
Nope.
no,
Do you want to?
no.
I
No.
have enough on my plate right now, to be honest with you. Oh, my God.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to accept the Lucini Bus Lines contract for fiscal year 21 and 22.
Mhm.
Second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. And now we're gonna vote on the option year.
Correct.
So I'm, right?
Yep, that's
Right?
correct. You got it right. Absolutely.
So I'm gonna make a motion to accept Lucini Bus Lines contract for fiscal year 2023 with the option to renegotiate.
So there is no
that
renegotiation.
correct?
You're gonna basically accept, you're gonna
Okay.
exercise your right to accept the fiscal year 23 bus contract.
Okay, so let me do that again. And make a motion to accept Lucini Bus Lines contract for the third year, 2023, for $1,471,500.
Wiseman,
Star second.
All those in favor?
I'm still a little confused. He said exercise our option. So is
Yeah,
that
he-
actually the motion? So the motion
Yes, it's
should be that you're
It's
moving
an
to.
option
Go
year.
ahead. Yeah, yeah, but that wasn't in your motion. So I'm wondering if we have to have
Didn't
that
put the word option year in
somehow
there?
articulated. Pardon
Okay.
me?
Let's try this one more time. I make a motion to accept Lucini Bus Lines bus contract for fiscal year 2023 as an option year on to make it a 3-year contract. How does that
Good.
sound?
That sounds much better. Good.
Okay,
O'Neill second.
all right. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes?
Wiseman, yes.
Star yes.
Okay, and now there's one
That's it, I
more,
think.
right?
That's it. You're done with me.
That's it.
No, I think we need to do the
What-
special
no.
education addendum.
That's the lead. I was just going to say yes. So do I have a motion to accept the in-district special education contract addendum for $34,380 in fiscal year 20 from Lucini Bus Lines?
Star so moved.
Wiseman,
I need
second.
this- Thank you. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes?
Wiseman, yes.
Star yes.
Okay. I think we're done with Lucini Bus right now.
Now
Thank
you're
you
done with
very
me
much,
too.
everybody.
All
Bye,
right, have a great night,
David. Have a
ladies.
nice
Take care, everybody.
night.
Thank you, David.
Bye.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Discussion and possible vote on school sports. Dr. Cabral.
Okay, so as we're all aware, a lot of things are up in the air. Sports is one of them. We've been following the MIAA, or the Athletic Association for the state, and currently they have tentative plans to start their season. And there's been a new makeup of that with a 4th wedge season that they're adding to that. But there are several things for your consideration about that. And so Athletic Director Bill Matthews and OA Principal Wes Paul are here. I don't think the middle school principal, Luke Carroll, is here, but we have middle school and high school sports, both of which need to be considered. And Bill and Wes have a series of recommendations for your consideration tonight regarding the sports program. Bill
Good
and
evening,
Wes.
everybody. I'll take you through, if that's okay, the recommendations that we have at this point in time. Just to give you a little bit of background, as Alicia said, the MIA and DESE have issued some joint guidance about fall sports regarding returning to interscholastic athletics this fall. So the guidance provides the foundation or boundaries for the return to athletics, with many decisions that are still left in our hands. So Mr. Paul and I are in alignment with this guidance, which addresses the following: the recognition that sports are important for the educational experience and emotional health of our students. Providing as many safe athletic participation opportunities as possible should be supported. Modifications to sport rules are being developed by MIAA sport committees to meet the Energy and Environmental Affairs guidelines, which allow most fall sports to play this fall and minimize the risk to students. Some sports can be moved to a new wedge season between the winter and spring seasons if deemed too risky or too difficult to field this fall. So our plan is to have the following sports return to play this fall beginning September 18th. The low-risk sports, as classified by the EEA, are boys and girls cross country and golf. Those sports require minimal modifications in order to compete. The moderate risk sports that we would like to return this fall are field hockey, boys and girls soccer. Those are considered moderate risk sports. So additional modifications need to be made in order for those sports to compete. The MIA sport committees are in the process of working on those modifications. And in the case of field hockey and soccer, those modifications candidly will be pretty significant, but feedback from one of the committee members is that, and he's a soccer coach in our league, feels that it's recommended to go ahead to play soccer under the modifications that they're putting forth from this committee. But we don't know exactly what those committee recommendations are, but they have to follow those EEA guidelines. They have to meet those guidelines. The following sports will be delayed to the wedge season between the winter and spring seasons. So the season would be tentatively right now between mid-February and the end of April. We'd move football, competitive cheer, and volleyball. So currently competitive cheer and competitive cheer and football are considered high-risk sports. And under the EEA guidelines, there is no way to play those sports in the state of Massachusetts at the current time. They have guidelines for cohorts and limitations of 10 people practicing, et cetera, but there is no foundation available to actually play football or competitive cheer at this point in time with the conditions that would be required to have their full competitions. The volleyball, the challenge with volleyball is that 4 of the schools in the Hockomock League are starting remote only. So they're not allowing anyone in the building. So they're not going to be in a position where they don't allow students in the building, but then allow volleyball players to come in and practice and play. 4 additional schools in our league are using their gym space for classroom space. So 8 out of the 12 are not able to host volleyball as it stands. Additionally, the challenges of managing an indoor event at this point in time is much more challenging than an outdoor event. And so as league athletic directors and then working with Wes, we would like to move volleyball to that wedge season. We believe that that's the most reasonable, the most practical way to go forth at this point in time. I think that covers the background part of it. I believe the decisions, Leisha, I'll defer to you on this, but I believe that the decisions that need to be made at the school committee level has to do with approving moving forward with a plan or funding for fall sports. And then the decision on remote learners. We'll have remote only learners and whether or not those student athletes can participate in athletics this fall. It is our recommendation that they would be able to participate. We would have attendance each day for both those students that are in class and those that are learning remotely. So we would track attendance in the same way and the eligibility would work in the same way. So that is one of the decisions that we need to address at this point. I believe the other ones are sub-varsity sports competition. One of the challenges we have there are transportation, possible transportation issues. I think that the way the schedule is going to work, it will address a lot of that. We're going to scale down the number of sports fielded each day so that there would be enough buses available. And then with the reduced season, it will help offset the expense of the additional buses. But I think we also need to address the fact that there may be a need to have parents transport kids to some of the games. And although we have that in our current registration waiver, it is something I want to bring forth and make sure everybody understands that it may be necessary to use that more frequently. I believe the other item is the spectators at events. This has been a pretty extensive discussion at the league level, and it's pretty clear that some schools feel that they don't want to have anybody at their events, and may not allow any spectators at their events. We believe that it's manageable. Our typical crowd for any of the sports that we're fielding or that we plan to field this fall are well under 50. We don't anticipate bumping up against the maximum. We don't see any tournament games. We don't believe there's going to be a postseason tournament. So, it will be a challenge with contact tracing, but we believe that we can do it. So our recommendation is, and the league would like to go forward with the recommendation that we would allow home visitors to attend the home games, but not travel. And I think that it's a pretty reasonable way to go. The thought process is that it kind of keeps communities within the community so that you don't have OA parents traveling to Sharon and possibly spreading if somebody has it, or a visiting person from Taunton coming here and spreading it to our spectators. However, as Wes and I discussed it, I think that if you have a visiting parent show up, or if you have a team that is transported by their parents, I don't really see how you turn them away as long as you're under the 50 cap. So what we would do is discourage away teams from bringing spectators. But if they came, that as long as we were under 50, as long as they were socially distanced, and as long as they're wearing masks, that we would not turn them away. So that would be our recommendation. So I know I've covered a lot of ground here. Certainly I expect that there'll be some questions, so fire away.
Yeah, who's got the first question? Anybody? Caroline, go ahead.
I have a few questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I guess my first question in terms of the recommendation about having spectators is, my sense from reading, I know people are tired of hearing me talk about all the reading I'm doing, but from reading about other areas, other states too, admittedly not Massachusetts, where, sports have been a part of the reopening of school, there seems to be a great deal of difficulty in enforcing the safety measures that, very well-meaning athletic directors and others have in place. And in fact, there seems to be a pretty consistent reluctance on the part of police departments to kind of get into things like enforcing mask requirements, enforcing, numbers of people at a certain event. In fact, obviously it creates risks for our own first responders if they're having to wade into a crowd to try to disperse that crowd or to try to enforce mask regulations. So I'm wondering if you have something in mind about how that really can occur. That's question number one. Number two, I know UADs and sports folks talk to each other a lot. Do you have any sense at all of some of the mitigation measures that are being planned for the sort of the early bird sports, cross country and golf? I totally get are very low risk, and it's obviously very easy to maintain social distancing and things like that. But field hockey and boys and girls soccer seem to me, quite a bit more complicated when it comes to mitigation measures. So do you have any sense of what they're looking at there? Because it's really hard for me to think of ways to I mean, my grandson is a super soccer nut, but I can't imagine that, and I've been to many games, so I can't imagine how you really make that safe. My son also played varsity soccer, so I'm just trying to kind of envision what ideas might be floated around in that respect. I think, oh yes, and obviously you already touched on this. If you ask parents to drive, it would be very difficult to, tell them then they can't stay and watch the game. So again, you come back to sort of the original question, which is how do you enforce those regulations? Okay, that's my list of questions.
Good questions, Caroline. I think the enforcement piece is very difficult. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have the answers for that because, you know, the police departments are reluctant to be the masked police. And if people don't want to cooperate with you at an event, it's a very difficult situation. You really only have the power of shutting the game down and asking them to leave the event. So I don't have the magic bullet for that. I really don't. It can be or could be a difficult situation. Certainly, we would do everything we could to enforce the requirements. You know, to encourage people to do it and ask them if we observe that they're not social distancing or if they're not wearing masks, that we would ask them to do that using the PA system, et cetera. But as you recognize, it's a very difficult challenge. Did you have another question on that,
Oh,
Caroline?
well, the other one was if you had any ideas from talking to your fellow ADs about what kinds of mitigation measures could be applied for soccer and field hockey.
The thing that the two things that they're doing is asking them to wear masks when they are within 6 feet of each other. I don't know exactly how that's going to look, where people take a mask or some kind of a neck, like a gaiter up and down during
No
the game.
gators. No gators.
So I don't know how that looks, but I know that they have the sports medicine committee involved in it. But they're eliminating things like throw-ins and the types of restarts that have people bunched up. So it's difficult for me to envision it too, but I have a great deal of faith in the athletic director that's on the committee. And he said, honestly, it's going to look a lot different than the game of soccer than you've seen in the past. But it's his feeling that it's worthwhile to move forward with. But we won't know any more than that at this point until they do release it. And I think that's around September 1st for soccer and field hockey.
Caroline, I can jump in real quickly on your question about parents and or visitors or our own fans for that matter that would be reluctant to cooperate with the mask issue. We've had situations in the past with parents from other schools or from our school where we basically put them on a ban. They can't go to an away school game and they can't come to our school because of past behavior, and that's our right. So if we had a parent who was obstinate and refused to deal with the mask issue, that parent would be addressed by the athletic director or the principal from the other community, as would ours if it was our community, and they would be prevented from going to any other games.
Well, that's somewhat reassuring. I do think it's so important because obviously we want to protect our young athletes and their parents and everyone else involved. So, more power to you if you can pull this off. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Wes.
Jen, you have the next question and then Jackie.
Sure. So, Wes, on that note about, when you have unruly fans or whatever, and they get disciplined, is that type of behavior normally, I guess, does that process normally get initiated by, say, an official who's dealing with a heckler or somebody loud, or is it, somebody from the home school's administration? I'm just wondering if we're putting, game officials in the way of having to then be the mask police for somebody in the crowd, or if we have sufficient staff on hand who would deal with that.
We would have sufficient staff. It's usually these types of things with parents, occasionally in like a game like basketball.
My apologies, Wes. I cannot hear you.
Occasionally, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Occasionally in basketball, it's the referee who will bring it to our attention. But in games like soccer, football, it's athletic directors, principals, assistant principals who are made aware, usually by other parents, that there's somebody who's acting immature or irresponsible, and we go over and address it. Sometimes we go over with the police to address it, but it's not the officials.
Okay, great. And I did have one more question, again, around spectators. I would imagine that for soccer and field hockey, the environment for that would be the turf field or something similar for an away game, where you have a large open semi-public space around it. So is there any control over the people who would be standing on the outside of the fence? Are they officially spectators, or is it they're not a spectator until they set foot inside the fenced area?
I think that that's an extreme gray area, and we've talked about that amongst our league athletic directors. And it's our feeling like if they're on your property, like if they're on school grounds, that you have some control of them because that is your property. But if they're on the street, you know, or if it's a public playground that the school doesn't have direct control over, I don't believe that we have any power to do anything with those folks. So the guys that are standing on the hill overlooking the game, you know, or looking through the fence, that's really beyond our scope, I believe.
Okay.
We do have a question in the chat that's related, but I'm wondering if you want to save all questions for the public comment.
And I think Jackie had a question after me. So I'm sorry, I'm
Okay.
done. Those
I'm
were my
sorry.
questions. Sorry.
So the spectators are really where I'm concerned as well. I think it's great that we're figuring out ways that sports can go forward for the kids. I think it's important. Personally, I think remote only children should be able to participate as well. My concern, as Jen and Caroline have both stated, was with the spectators, not just whether they're going to be wearing masks and socially distanced and the enforcement within the boundaries of what's the sport that's being played, but as Jen mentioned, the outside or in the parking lot, if people are congregating, like if we say, you know, if you say, well, we already have 50 people, you can't come in. So where are those other people going and what are they doing? And I certainly don't have the answer to this, but this is kind of what I worry about with spectators. So I know this is all kind of being worked out and we've never dealt with this before, but that's my concern.
I understand your concerns, Jackie, and it's not that I don't share them. It's like, I think we've gone around and around about this topic at a district level. And I think when you poll the schools in our league, again, you'll have those that say we're not going to allow any, and others that say, yeah, we'll basically accept anybody that will come as long as we're under 50, and you know, we try to enforce that. So it's a difficult one, no doubt.
And the flip side to not allowing fans will be the parents who are, especially parents of seniors, but parents who want to observe their kid at home in a game. They're going to be a really difficult group to say you can't come in and see your kid play.
True.
I know we have difficult jobs ahead in all sorts of areas, but if there's a way to support the parents in their role as parents, and we have great parents in this town, I think it's worth our effort to try every opportunity to give them that.
And there may be areas in between. I do know that some districts are allowing only parents as spectators, for example. It is an option.
Like parent cards, like they're actually a proposal for some schools to do it where each student would get 2 tickets, if you will, like kind of permanent tickets that would give their parents a pass to the game.
Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's what's happening right now with youth hockey. There's not literally a card, but my 2 hockey players have both started back. There's been a lot of webinars, et cetera, on, you know, from mass hockey, and what they're doing is 1 parent is allowed in the arena per player, and you have to check in as you walk in the door. I mean, that doesn't address the problem of being outdoors and you know, having an uncontrolled environment where people can be walking around the fields or whatever. But I think I'd be in favor of something like that. That's a little bit more strict. So rather than just saying, okay, as long as we're under 50, anybody can come in, that it would be, you know, maybe 1 to 2 spectators per player allowed in.
Okay. Caroline?
I just want to say that I think that's a great idea.
M.G.L.
Pardon me? Oh, I said, I just want to say, I think that's a great idea. Now I'm getting an echo. What?
Okay.
Again?
Okay, you're all set.
No, I'm not.
Michelle, go ahead. Oh, I thought you were done.
Go ahead, Caroline, finish.
I'm not. I just was getting an echo. Anyway, I just wondered what Bill and Wes thought of Jen's idea. I think it sounds, very fair. And, in a case where you might have more students than you would be able to offer spectator cards or whatever, you could have even, a sort of taking turns situation. I do agree. It's so important for parents to be able to watch their kids. I also agree with Jen that just saying, the first 50 people to show up are the ones who get in. And then maybe, parents who couldn't get there for whatever reason, coming from work or on time, would be left out in the cold. So I'm wondering what you and Wes think of that, Bill.
I think that it would be a step in the right direction. I'd certainly prefer that over not having any spectators, I think, because I do think that parents have been through a lot, and these parents have been there supporting our program, supporting our teams, and especially the senior parents. I just would hate them not to have the opportunity to watch their kids their senior year, at least at home events. So that would be a step in the right direction. I think I would support that.
I would support it as well, but I also want to remind everybody that generally speaking, these sports, if they're not playoff time, they don't generate crowds that are, I don't think they're more than 30, sometimes in the 20s. So I don't think even, and that's with away guests and home guests. So I don't anticipate us reaching 50. We'd be hard pressed to probably get 25 if we were issuing 2 tickets per student. But I will say, in conjunction with Bill, that if it's one or the other, or we can give 2 passes or nothing, I'd rather give 2 passes. But I still think we can manage keeping it at a 50 cap.
Well, if you gave the cards, you could make them sort of priority entry cards so that, the people that had cards, again, this does assume that people could get there on time, but, once you have admitted the people with the priority cards, which would be the official spectators of the students who are related to the students, then you could allow some other people in. That what you said makes sense. If you typically only have between 25 and 30 spectators, then it doesn't seem fair not to be able to allow other people who are interested to come in. But I really like the idea, though, of giving some sort of preference to the actual parents or the other close friends or family of students with those, entry cards. So that's just a thought.
One other thing that I'd say at this point is that I think it's something that could change. So there might be a starting point, and 2 weeks into it, there may be a decision that we need to be more rigorous, whether we have problems with whatever the policy, or we may find that other schools are having good success with a more lenient policy. So I'm definitely looking at what we're doing as we're paving the road while we're driving down it here, so, we learn as we go. And I think it's pretty reasonable to take that approach, to take a position that you feel comfortable with and learn from it and adjust accordingly.
Thanks, Bill.
And Bill, can you remind me again, within the Hawk, or I don't know, whatever teams our kids will play against, again, where the spectator and transportation issue may overlap for away games. What are we hearing from the districts that would be hosting our away games around whether or not they'll allow spectators if we need parents to transport?
It hasn't been completely vetted. We're still, other districts are in the same process that I am having these discussions with the school committee and administration. I get the sense that where it's going to fall out is that if you're transporting someone to a sub-varsity game, if that's typically, I think, where the need might be, that if you're transporting them, that there would be an allowance for that parent to stay at the event, even for those schools that are pretty strict about just wanting home fans there. I'm not sure where that's going to fall with schools that say no fans at all, no spectators at all. So it's literally, I think, going to come out in a way where we as athletic directors have to contact our opponents each week and say, you know, what's your policy? What are you doing in terms of spectators? And then we have to communicate that with them for our home events and do it opponent by opponent.
And is there a requirement or expectation that that contact tracing would be possible from an event? So is there an expectation that we're going to be able to hunt down everybody who was there and let them know if there's, okay.
That we would
nods
have to
from
implement
Wes.
that. Yeah, we would have to implement that. There's no doubt. And that would be, you know, whether they're filling out a form, and everybody that comes in has to fill out that form, or if I can find a way to, if you will, kind of pre-populate that information, that we have the contact information. So if we did tickets for parents, you know, we'd know who those folks were. And if we could account for which tickets came in, that we'd be able to identify who those people were that were at the event and have their contact information. But I need a little bit, there's some additional information I need from Kristen Kennedy on the questionnaire about COVID-19 symptoms, stuff like that, if there's a pre-screening requirement as well as contact tracing. So I would need to work those things out. But I do think it's manageable for the small size of the crowds that we have.
Yeah, any event of this nature that we have as of now, unless the guidance changes, we are required to keep a log of who participates. And it's for that reason, for contact tracing.
Okay.
Michelle, you've had your hand
Michelle,
up.
you had a question?
I know I was waiting for Nancy. First, I am in support of the remote learners being able to participate. And I just want to make sure that what we're saying is that somebody's homeschooled who's withdrawn from EPS would not participate or not have that option. Is that correct?
No, according to MIAA, homeschool students do have the ability to participate.
They always have.
Yes.
That's always been the case.
Okay. If the child that's a homeschool child, would they still be paying the athletic fee?
Yes.
Okay. Bill, you talked about that there was going to be further guidance coming out about exactly like what a game would look like, per se. Do you know when that guidance is supposed to come out? Like, is there ever a point where if something comes out as a guidance and we all say that's a huge red flag, if we vote to approve sports now, do we have the option to rethink that if something comes up that's a bigger issue?
I believe that guidance is going to come out September 1st. I think that there's always room for making a decision before we actually go on the field to say, you know, we've changed our mind. We don't want to move forward with these sports. I'm pretty comfortable that, you know, we'll have something that will be viable. I don't think I'm confident you're not going to see something that it's going to be a big red flag for you. But September 1st is the date that I've heard that we expect to see that those sport modifications.
I heard the same thing at the board of directors.
Okay, and no sports though would be starting before September
18th.
18th.
Mm-hmm.
So then that brings me to the spectator issue, because that is something that I think could be a slippery slope. But I certainly, as a parent who's had students, can understand wanting to be there. Is this part of it, and this is my question, I guess, for the school committee, is the part of spectators, is that something that we can table until a firmer plan about tracing comes back, about how we're going to assign and give authorized cards, how that might be affected? Is that going to include authorizing cards for away teams? Like, there's just a lot of great ideas came up tonight that we don't have answers yet for. So I'm wondering if that small component of it is something that we can flesh out a little bit more. I think we all agree we'd like to see something, but I don't think that we have a lot of details about how exactly that would work yet. I don't know. I'm just tossing that out there.
Well, tonight's vote is discussion and possible vote on school sports. I would say spectators are, I know it's part of the sports, but I would say we're just voting on sports tonight.
Well, you have a few decisions, whether remote students can participate, spectators, and also
that is part
the
of it.
middle,
Okay.
and also the middle school sports. We haven't gotten there yet.
I'm wondering,
All
can
right.
we, I would imagine we can vote on the remote only
Yes,
learners.
absolutely.
We're not waiting for any information on there. There's a pretty clear recommendation.
No,
Um,
unless you, the only thing that would be a little different is if we go full remote. There is a possibility that other districts could still be in session and we go remote because we're making decisions based on Easton alone. And so if you want to add that element in some way, I don't know if you view them differently or the same, but there really are two possibilities. If everybody's remote due to a governor's order or something of that nature, as in the spring, nobody's playing, obviously. But you have two sort of scenarios here. One is we're in a hybrid, students who want to work remotely in that hybrid, are you allowing them to play sports? And then if we had to close our schools and go remote at some point, even though other schools in the Hawk, for example, do you want to make that decision at that time based on the information you have? Or, you know, you might want to clarify that a little bit and not just say remote equals playing. Because there are some different potential scenarios of that.
okay.
Nancy?
Jackie?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Leisha. My personal opinion, as I said, I think remote only students should be able to participate. But if the entire district goes remote because of a surge in infection rate, I think that's a completely different situation. And I think that should be something that we're going to have to, if that happens, we're going to have to revisit. I think whatever we decide tonight, I think, you know, why we're going remote and if it makes sense to shut everything down. I don't think we can foresee every potential situation why we might have to go fully remote. So I don't necessarily think we need to make that decision right now. But I think that is something that down the line, if that's where we're going, this is going to have to be revisited.
Caroline?
I just wanted to say that that was actually my thought all along, is that we were really only voting tonight on whether to allow sports for families who are going to have their children learning remotely while we're in the hybrid. I have zero interest in making a more sweeping judgment and consent at this point for sports, because even if it's just our district that's full remote, I think there would have to be very compelling reasons for that. And I can't imagine that those compelling reasons wouldn't in some way involve participation in sports. So I do think that this has to be a sort of targeted vote that is just for students that are learning remotely while we're in a hybrid model. Does that make sense to everyone else?
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Bill, when you talked about the EEA spectator guidelines, who's EEA? Is that Easton?
No, it's Energy and Environmental Affairs. So they're the ones that have been tasked with putting together the youth sports guidelines. They rank the sports on risk, and they've implemented the limitations on the number of people at a gathering, et cetera. They've put all the regulations, not just for youth sports, but I think for basically all events, all public events.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
So actually, I do.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one more, Nancy. So, all right, so we didn't hear anything today on middle school sports. So I imagine we'll table that until a future meeting, or do you have recommendations and feedback for us on that now?
So the changes that we made to the fall sports, we eliminated middle school soccer as a middle school sponsored sport. And so the youth sports programs are able to field those teams. So those kids have actually had a tryout, and I believe that they'll be playing this fall. I saw Luke Carroll just show up. Luke, great timing. So now we have middle school, we had the middle school field hockey programs move from a school sanctioned but not sponsored sport to a fully school sponsored sport. And we're just working on getting scheduling together, et cetera. I just got word today that the Bay State League and the Tri-Valley League, those are two neighboring schools or leagues, excuse me, to the west and kind of to the north of us, but immediately surrounding the Hockomock League. Interestingly, they have the most middle school teams of any leagues in the South Shore area. So they, as leagues, voted to cancel all of their middle school sports. We are not part of a league. The Hockomock League does not have very many middle school programs, so there's no formal league. There's no other teams to really schedule within the Hockomock League. So because we're working on the high school athletics, I've put it on the agenda just to say, it's something that we need to consider. Is it something we should move forward with? Scheduling wise, I think, in the management of what we have is going to be challenging, but I don't want to make the recommendation to cancel it either, because I think these kids need opportunities as well. So I don't have a strong recommendation one way or the other, but I think it's something that needs to be considered at the school committee level.
Any other questions?
Well,
Go ahead. Go ahead,
can-
Jen.
We're going to consider that.
Jennifer.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. So is the one of the complicating factors there that we typically for middle school would be scheduling with these two other leagues and scheduling outside of the Hawk?
Some of the scheduling would be done there.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So that
it's
increases
not
cross-community exposure.
Yeah, it's not totally dependent on that. It's interesting that they made that decision. It's just one of the things that happened to pop up today.
Okay.
I can jump in on the schedule piece if it's helpful, Bill.
Yeah, Mr. Carroll, can we hear what your thoughts are on?
Well, I just know that, this year obviously is the first year that it moves into sort of that team sport realm as far as field hockey goes. And, in the past when it was functioning as a club sport, I found that, a lot of the games that we scheduled, a lot of the matches that we scheduled were with recreation departments or town sports, not necessarily other middle schools. So I would think that scheduling with true middle schools, maybe a slight issue, particularly where some are facing the same decisions, obviously, that we are about whether we're going to have a sport or not. So I think scheduling can be problematic. I mean, I obviously trust in whatever recommendation Bill Matthews comes up with. We obviously want opportunities for our kids, in athletics, and but I'm slightly removed from the difficulties of the scheduling, but I can imagine it may be particularly difficult because I've seen how that was scheduled over the last 10 years as more of a club sport, and it was difficult, and it was not always with other schools, but with towns and recreation departments.
Jackie?
All right, so I just want to make sure I understand. So when we're talking about middle school sports, we're talking about field hockey. What other sports are we talking about?
For the fall, just field hockey.
Just field hockey, okay. So do you have a recommendation about whether we should continue or to try to schedule games or not? Is there?
I would have to, Bill has been so more involved with that as I'm more planning for, the opening of school and making sure that we're ready to take all the students in the hybrid model.
Just a few things.
Hasn't been that high on my radar, and I know that Bill has been on it, and I trust in, his opinion and the direction that he thinks we should go when that decision needs to get made.
Yeah, I'm really split on it because I really would like the kids to have the opportunity. I can see a huge challenge with it. I mean, I see what's coming our way in terms of trying to get all the things in place, and having those 3 new teams is somewhat daunting, but I don't want to be the one to sit here and say we can't do it. I think we can figure out a way to do it. It'll be challenging, but ultimately I'm not going to make a recommendation to cancel it. But I just, I would ask the committee to recognize the difficulty of trying to kind of put it together at this point in time to transition it.
Caroline? Sorry,
I'm
Nancy,
wondering-
if that's not okay, let me know. I'm just trying to help you out. Go ahead, Caroline.
I'm just wondering if it would be all right if we, again, as I mentioned, targeting the motion to vote previously to, current, to benefit current remote students during the hybrid model. I'm wondering if we could consider middle school separately, because one of the concerns I have is if some of the games are being played with other programs that are outside of school districts, I'm not sure that we necessarily would know all of the measures that were being taken to keep students safe, and whether they're really enforcing, the size of the event limits and masks and so on. So in order to make sure that our own students and obviously their families are protected, I think that we'd have to be very confident in those other programs. And to me, it seems like a little bit of a separate issue and maybe shouldn't be encompassed in the vote about the remote learners at the high school level.
No, each of those are going to be considered separately. And it sounds as though you have come to a decision about remote learning. We can vote and move on from that and then talk about these separately if they seem to be kind of interweaving. If someone wants to make a motion.
So it's my understanding the first motion will be can remote learners participate in golf, cross country, field hockey, and boys and girls soccer?
While
The
we're
high
in a
schools.
remote, while we're at the high school, while we're in a hybrid model.
What about when we're all in a remote model? Are we still having sports?
I've been very clear. Other people can obviously disagree. I don't think we can make that decision because, my own feeling is if we are compelled to go to all remote, there will be strong reasons for that.
Right. No,
That
I
will
agree.
probably involve our sport.
So, all right, so the motion is in a hybrid model, remote learners are allowed to participate in golf, cross country, field hockey, and boys and girls soccer
At the high school level.
at the high school level.
So moved, Wiseman.
Star
Second,
second.
O'Neill. Oh, you got 2 seconds.
I beat ya.
You did.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Now, do we have to vote on fans right now?
That's
Okay.
more of a timetable thing, and I'm going to leave that to Bill. He will need to know that obviously before the first event.
It's not necessary. It's not necessary to vote on it at this point in time. However, it's helpful to get direction from where you think the committee will go with it so that I can provide that back to the league
Okay.
to try to put some, as best we can, some consistency around it for the league.
Well, I'm in favor of the home fans with some kind of a ID card or whatever to come and watch their kids play.
But in deference to what Wes said, if you had a small number, maybe we could make those sort of the priority cards. And then if, only 20 parents or other fans show up that are related to the students, maybe we could allow a certain number of additional people in. What do you think?
I think the stands are big enough to hold in social distance. I would say, what? 50, what's the gathering?
Well, 50 is
size
the
right now?
maximum anyway. 50 is the maximum.
Right. Okay.
And
Dan,
I would,
Dan,
I
did
would,
you wanna add something?
Are
Jen.
all these played on the turf though? Where those stands are?
I don't know.
I
Golf
think
and cross-
spectatorship at cross country and golf is fairly minimal because they can't see, unless I could have that wrong, but you
That's even
can't
true
see
on
the
national-
activity happening.
That's true.
So much of it happens in the woods or, 9 holes in.
Okay,
I-
so
and
does
I
that
would,
help, Bill?
I would
Go ahead.
I would be interested also in seeing if we could find a way to safely accommodate visiting parents who are transporting their children, especially if being open to that helps with schools reciprocating that courtesy to our parents.
Does that help, Bill?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Luke. Thanks,
Are you
Wes.
going to make a determination about the field hockey recommendation at the middle school?
I have a
Again?
question on that. If
Go
we're
ahead,
having a
Michelle.
hard time scheduling games for the middle school field hockey, is it possible that they can do scrimmages with some of the high school field hockey, just so they have that experience?
Yes. You could, I think that the 8th graders could scrimmage the freshman team, could possibly play some of the freshman teams in the Hockomock League. The 8th graders, 7th and 8th graders, really not a big problem. You get down into the 5th grade, it's kind of going back to that league that Luke had mentioned earlier, because they're really, from what my research has produced so far, there's really no 5th and 6th grade teams out there at an interscholastic level. They're all recreation teams, and that's what's been scheduled in the past. So the plan was to move forward to try to get a schedule put together for the 8th graders, possibly the 7th graders, that would be interscholastic teams, but the 6th graders would have to have a schedule that would be not with other schools, it would be club teams at this point. And there's some chance, I think that league is still operating, and I've had contact with them, and I think that they're planning on moving ahead. As Caroline said, we don't know exactly what their parameters are, although I believe that they are subject to the same rules. What their enforcement is, I don't know, but they are subject to the same rules that we are for, how the sport is played.
I have some
Caroline?
questions here.
Well, wait, I think we have.
Okay,
to finish.
1 second, Caroline.
That's fine.
Yeah. I do think that whatever vote we take, particularly about middle school, we just have to be aware that we may have to revisit. Technically, we might have to even revisit the vote for high school, depending on what Wes and Bill are finding as this whole thing unfolds. But I think there are more questions with the middle school because, again, we don't know exactly what other programs are doing particularly in terms of enforcement. I really want kids to be able to play sports, but more than that, I want them to be safe and healthy. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I think we just have to be aware, whatever vote we take, we might have to revisit. I'm done.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Chrissy, you said there were questions.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that they were here.
Yep.
The first question is from, hold on 1 second. Jane Martin, 28 Armour Lane. Would the district shut down a game if there was an issue? Might this be a way to help everyone understand the seriousness of the compliance?
My interpretation of the question that has been posed is that if we had serious problems with compliance from the spectators, would we be willing to stop the game to require those spectators to adhere to those guidelines? My answer to that would be yes.
Okay, the next question is from Beth Gaylor, 9 Day Street. I would like to know how captains' practices are currently being monitored. I know several teams have been holding them over the summer and continue to hold them, and that the coaches are aware. My understanding is that almost no social distancing is happening and virtually no masks are being worn.
We have repeatedly gone out to the coaches and asked them to provide guidance to the student athletes. It's my belief that the coaches are 100% on board with the guidance and have provided that information to their players, to their student athletes. The enforcement part of it, I do not see that as a coach's responsibility. They're not available and not being paid to have any contact with their athletes outside of their season. So the responsibility does not lie on the coach to enforce that. I have made it clear to the coaches that I expect them to support the guidelines and to communicate those to the student athletes and to strongly urge them to follow them. I'm not sure, I mean, we're all kind of in a situation where we want them to follow them, but I'm really kind of at a loss as to what we do beyond that.
Okay, the next question or statement is from Liz Bornstein, 31 Walden.
Chrissy, I'm sorry, but a school committee person has to go
Sorry,
first.
I didn't see that.
Michelle?
So are you saying that the coach is not the one who sets up or authorizes or knows about these captain practices? That
No.
that's all student?
Student driven.
Actually illegal for the
Thank you.
schools involved.
I'm sorry, you have to speak a little louder, Wes.
Captain's practices are always misunderstood. The schools have no control or influence or suggest that happens. It's been something that's been going on for a long period of time, but it's a rite of passage. One group of students playing the sport take it the next summer. It's not a coach's program. It's not a school's program. It's completely student in the community.
Yeah, MIAA does not allow a coach to participate in something like that. It's not allowable, and we don't allow it. We have been, almost all of us on here have been by the fields and have asked students who were there to leave, to social distance, to put on masks. We enforce it as much as we physically can. We're really asking parents to help us with that. Your students should not be participating in any behavior that is not sanctioned by the school or the Board of Health, if you are able to help with that, because really we kind of patrol, for lack of a better word, it's not the best word for this, but we drive through as much as we can to try to physically enforce it. And it's very difficult for us to stay on top of that. The Board of Health is doing it too, but they're very limited in staff and they obviously have a lot of other things that are going on. So we've been trying our very best. I've seen every single communication Mr. Matthews has sent out. I've seen him post literally begging people on social media not to engage in activities. We're doing the best we can. We really need people to help us with that and not allow their children to participate.
I would like to clarify one point because we had a complaint about the program that we have running on the turf, and it's through an independent person, or through a program where an individual who's a strength and conditioning coach, and he's also an assistant coach with us, but he came forward with his own business plan, his own insurance, reserved the turf, and has a formal program going for an off-season conditioning program that is completely under the rules of both the MIAA and the guidance provided by the EEA. They're wearing masks, they're socially distancing, they're doing all those requirements, sanitizing any equipment. So I know that we had a complaint about that, but I want to be clear that that is allowed under both sets of guidelines. And people will see those folks up there on the turf on Mondays and Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, I think, mornings.
And there's quite an extensive list of qualifications. They have to, as Mr. Matthews said, they have to have insurance that we have thoroughly vetted. We've discussed this with the Board of Health. They have to have a log. They have to have a plan for any kind of contact tracing. It's extremely in depth, but those are the only, and no one should see them violating any of those standards. That would be it.
Chrissy, any more questions?
Yes. From Liz Bornstein, 31 Walden Drive. I can tell you there are easily 40 parents for JV field hockey games between home and away observers, crammed into a tight space for the JV field by the track. I don't think self-monitoring will work in that particular environment. particularly because that field's location is right next to the parking lot. And as a parent and as someone currently teaching at a university, I can tell you that the clearer the policy is, the better the compliance. The more people speaking the same language and enforcing the policy, the better the compliance. So whatever Easton decides, please have the coaches, the principal, the AD, the boosters, the captains, the police, etc., all sending and following the same message. And then Katie Wright, 6 Sharon Drive. If we are not using lockers in the middle school, where would they put their equipment for practice? Are the gym lockers open?
I can answer that one. Well, I mean, our lockers in general at the middle school, because they're half lockers, it's often difficult for the kids to get field hockey equipment into them anyway, because the sticks don't fit. So in the past, stuff has been stored in, typically in the girls' locker room, sometimes in my office with goalie equipment in some of the larger areas and things, larger things. But we'll have space. So I anticipate that, we're going to have unused space that we could be able to create a secure location where we could store equipment and spread it out for the kids without having to assign lockers.
Do you want me to keep going? There's 2 more.
Yes, please.
Related to this. There's another one that we can address later. Laura Ayasi, 98 Rockland Street. But aren't the practices held on school grounds? Can they be prevented from using school property?
That would require, it would require closing all of our facilities, so they couldn't be used at all.
We have actually, during this entire event, we have locked gates. We had parents literally bring step ladders to go over the fence to utilize the facilities. We have locked up basketball nets. We have locked up other nets. We've done all of that. Adults and students alike physically breach that on their own.
And the last question that's here right now on this topic, Katie Wright again, is the 50 people max, including players and coaches with the spectators. Field hockey and soccer have 11 players for each team on the field, 22 total players on the field, plus students not in play.
It's a good question, but the guidance is that there is a maximum number of players on the field, which is 25. That's within the boundaries of the field of play. Then you have the sideline where the players are required to wear masks and socially distanced. All the coaches have masks. All the officials will have masks. Those numbers are not included in that total. So the spectator total of 50 is for spectators only. So those numbers are separate. Did I explain that adequately? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. All right, so the vote right now is to go with middle school sports. Is that what we're making a motion on? Yes?
Yeah, I think that's more timely. Certainly there's a lot of planning involved in that. And I think that it would be important for them to know if that's going to happen or not.
Yep.
Okay. So Caroline, go ahead.
If you make a motion, could you make it contingent on?
Caroline, you make the motion. Go ahead.
Okay.
You make the motion.
Then I'll move to approve middle schoolers engaging in their sports program, field hockey sports program, but contingent on the athletic director and the middle school principal being fully satisfied that all of the programs in which they're involved are adhering to safety guidelines related to COVID fully. Does that make sense?
Sounds fine to me. Is there a second?
Durant, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, so thank you, Mr. Matthews, Mr. Paul, and Mr. Carroll. You're certainly welcome to stay.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, vote to accept donation of 30 webcams. Dr. Cabral.
Yes, we have that screen just closed for me. Can you please just sorry about that. I just want to make sure I get the donor correctly. Lynn, can you please name the donor? I got it. Okay, we have, so we're utilizing webcams for many purposes. We
Have
had,
it here, Dr. Cabral.
I have it, thank you. We had been asked to make sure that teachers who wanted to utilize them and not use laptops or desktops were able to have them. And so we did purchase several, and it's extremely beneficial for us to receive this donation as well. So 30 webcams have been donated by Center Insurance Agency, a local Easton business. And so we wanted to bring that before you for your acceptance and obviously our gratitude.
That is very nice. Excellent. Do you know the value of 30 webcams? It's okay if you don't. I don't know what they are. So, I mean, I know what they are. I don't know what they're worth. All right. Does anybody have any comments or questions? All right.
I'm a little confused about how they would be used, Alicia.
So when we,
go ahead.
So when we have our hybrid sessions, students are going to remote in and teachers are going to be able to communicate with them. Students are going to be able to watch the lesson. We have desktop computers, many don't have cameras on them. We have laptops that we're providing that have cameras, but some staff members have asked us, they would like to actually move about the room. They don't have to. We just want to provide as many options as possible. Some may show their screen on the computer or what have you, but a couple of elementary teachers, for example, had said they have different things in their classroom that they want to be able to show students. So they will use the webcam, whether it's on a rolling cart or some sort of device, and they'll go over. We had a demonstration of this and it actually was very clear, very audible. And so they might go to the calendar in the morning and say, here's the calendar, let's work on this together. And then they may go to another part of the room. And it's just a little bit more mobile, or a lot more mobile than perhaps a laptop. And so we're very happy to be able to offer that as an option to them. It plugs into their computer.
What about security with them? Because you hear stories about people hacking webcams.
Anything that gets donated, first of all, our tech department evaluates all equipment for that when we order it, but anything that gets donated is evaluated by the tech department as well. And so we're going to make sure that we use things that are as safe as possible, as safe as they are, as safe as they come.
Any other questions? All right. Does anyone want to make the motion?
O'Neill, I move that we gladly and gratefully accept the donation of 30 webcams from this very generous donor.
Second.
Second. Okay. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Center Insurance. That's very nice of you. Discussion and possible vote to change Friday school committee meeting times. All right, this is on the agenda just to look at some of the Friday meetings, and instead of having a 3 o'clock start, have a 4 o'clock start. Michelle, would be able to make a 4 o'clock meeting if we could change it from a 3 to a 4. She can't make the 3, but she can make the 4. So I'm asking you to change any Friday 3 o'clock meeting to 4 o'clock.
And I just
want to 4 o'clock the
explain.
right time. Michelle, go ahead, Michelle.
So the reason I'm asking for this consideration is you all know, I teach in Providence. And so our schools have all been staggered, our start times, because we have so many schools and so many students. And my particular school, instead of starting at 8:55, is now starting at 9:35 or 8:35. And now I don't get out until 3. So where I could, last year I could leave at 2:20 and be just a little bit late for a 3 o'clock meeting. Now I'm 3:45 would be the absolute soonest I could get here, and 4 would be playing it safe. And I'm asking for consideration so I don't miss all the Friday meetings, because obviously the morning ones are a different issue. But I know that it affects a lot of people, so I'm just tossing it out there.
Caroline?
It does affect other people. I believe that it would be very difficult, for example, for Jackie on those days that, you know, her, obviously we do have members with childcare issues and so on, but, you know, we did this originally quite some time ago, and it was added the Friday meetings, and it was in deference to 2 school committee members at that time who really could only come in early in the morning. At that time, it was like 8 o'clock on Fridays. So it's kind of evolved, and then we went to 2 different times to accommodate, you know, different people on the committee. But I'm wondering now, at least as long as we're mostly meeting remotely, at least for most of the group, if we can't just go back to what we did for probably 20 years, which is always meet on Thursday evenings. And we used to meet at 7 p.m. We moved that up to 6 a couple of years ago, but now we've been meeting at 5. I'm just wondering, could we just add a second Thursday meeting at 5? And that way, I believe everyone on the school committee could be there. I do realize that it makes it a little bit later day for Dr. Cabral and Chrissy Pruitt, although my understanding is that they both work till midnight anyway. So pretty much 7 days a week. So I'm just wondering if we could possibly consider just a second Thursday meeting at 5 instead of trying to do this juggling with, you know, accommodating everybody at different times on Fridays.
Any comments?
That would work.
Input?
That would work for me. I mean, I'm sure people don't want to be there late on a Friday night anyway. Not that any of us are going anywhere these days, but.
All right, so do you want to make a motion for that? Either Michelle or Caroline?
Janet and Nancy, is that okay with you?
Yeah,
I have no objection. It's fine with me.
No objection. So
I'll be happy to make a motion that we move our second meeting each month to a Thursday evening at 5. Presumably in most cases, the Thursday that's connected to the Friday, but we may need to juggle those depending on whether there are conflicts for other people.
second,
I second it.
okay, all those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you.
All right,
And hopefully it's just for this year.
yeah. And yeah, okay, thank you, everybody. Next up, reopening update, Dr. Cabral.
Thank you. This is going to be a little bit different this time around, I think. I don't have a huge amount of new information for you. Next week, I would imagine we're going to have a lot of, or the next meeting, I imagine we're going to have a lot of questions because the building plans should be out by then. I will tell you that that's what all the principals are working on right now. The district plan really needed to be completed and accepted before we were able to move on to school level plans. So I realize the frustration of people not having every detail. Believe me, we feel the same way. This is very uncomfortable for us to not know exactly what's happening when, but we have a lot more figured out than we have been able to release, but we need to have different approvals. We need to make sure that the Board of Health approves certain things. We have to make sure that, you know, some things have to go through school committee. You're working on a mask policy, for example, bargaining units. So we can't just write it down and put it out. We really do have to have them vetted. As I said at the last meeting, I really think this is going to provide a better product. What I would like to do, however, is I have had difficulty keeping up with the FAQs because we have a lot of things we're trying to push out to people, a lot of information, and we're getting schools ready, and we're doing a lot of ordering and meetings and so forth. So I have a list of things that I am going to be adding to the FAQ, but I thought I might take the opportunity while people are present to be able to, and while it will be recorded, to answer some of those FAQs or frequently asked questions as they stand today. Because as we know, things are changing both in the medical field, but also at the state level with the Commissioner of Education's guidance and so forth. And so we do the best we can to keep up with that. We change on a dime. So I will say, you know, it seems like things are changing often, and they are. Much less because of any district decisions, more so because of what's happening on the state level. We change everything within the next day, but it's getting that information out that's, of course, difficult. We have the newsletter every week. I hope people are making use of that. We have received good feedback about that, and we will continue doing that, of course, as well. So would it be all right if I answered some frequently asked questions and perhaps took some questions?
Sure.
Okay. So these are mostly going to be family-based because the staff is going to, I actually have upcoming meetings with the staff where I'm going to be able to answer staff-specific questions. And so most of these are family-based questions, but certainly may have an impact on staff or what's happening in schools. So I think that's important too. So one of them is about using soapy water for desks. We did say, and it does say in the plan, maybe more than one spot, that we have purchased these soapy water bottles for all of the classrooms, hundreds and hundreds of them, and lots of paper towels. This is a direct result of our concern and our research on students using really harsh chemicals multiple times a day. We do know that there were parent concerns about that as well. There is a difference between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. And I think it's really important that, you know, unfortunately, some of us are way too deep in all of this stuff, but I can tell you that there are three very different things. We are doing mostly cleaning and disinfecting here. And so what the plan calls for is frequent cleaning. That's the soapy water. It's actually quite effective according to the CDC and several other sources, and I'm going to be posting those sources online. That's what we're using when a student is using the same desk over and over again. Cleaning that, you know, again, I'm sorry to repeat things people have heard, but the COVID virus has a lipid envelope, and the soap in the water breaks down the fatty acid, and not only does it remove it from surfaces, but it actually leaves a residue that discourages them from attaching for quite some time. So we've actually been encouraged to use the soapy water for regular cleaning, and we are, and it's safe for the children, and so it's a lot quicker for the children to wipe down their desk. It's a great responsibility for them to have, to understand the importance of cleaning their environment in a very safe way. In between uses from students, what we're doing is disinfecting, and that is the electrostatic sprayers that we're going to be using. Now, at the middle and high school levels, there are, at the high school level particularly, there are students who are going to be moving to different classrooms. We're really limiting their cohorts by the density in common areas, the entry and exits, the hallways, and also we're not using the cafeteria for lunch. But if high school students want to use disinfecting wipes, we have them. We have plenty of them. And so they will be available. They can make use of them. We don't encourage people to bring their own, just because as a public school, we need to have what's called an MSDS sheet, or a list of every chemical and everything that's used in the building. If people would like to, they want their student to have their own wipe, that's fine, but we really encourage you to reach out to the Director of Operations, David Twombly, first, to see what are acceptable, what do we have on file, the MSDS sheet, because even if your own child is using that chemical, we're very cognizant of the fact that other students are in the area, and we really need to be able to identify at any given time what chemicals are in our buildings at any time that students may be anywhere near. And so we do that. That is part of our responsibility, and we take that very seriously. That's the only reason we discourage people from just bringing things in. But if certainly we don't want people to feel as though they can't use that. If they want to give their child permission to use that, they certainly can. And again, we have wipes at school also. We have disinfecting wipes that we have the MSDS sheets for. So that's the reason we're using the soapy water. We're using it where cleaning is appropriate, and we're disinfecting when disinfecting is appropriate. Several people have sent me questions about it, and they're quoting the CDC, and the quote from the CDC says very clearly, cleaning many times a day is appropriate. And they're asking why they're not using wipes. That's because they have a different definition for cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. They're three different things. So we are absolutely following the CDC guidance on that. And we can certainly take more questions about that, but that is the reason behind that. It's not because we don't have it. And certainly staff will all have it available. If they would like to use it for any surfaces, they certainly can. Okay, the next is people have, or someone asked, if we go to phase 4, which is more of the, it's the next phase where we still have social distancing in place, and we still have some of these, we still have PPE required, for example, but we go down to 3 feet. We utilize the cafeteria again. Different elements are added to it because we have determined things are safer. We haven't determined that at this time, but somebody asked, if we get to that point, can students then, can parents then choose to have their students return to in-person learning? So right now, according to our plan, we have 2 dates that parents can elect to have their students go from remote to in-person in the hybrid model. And so that was a very good question. If we were to go to phase 4 and it were between those dates, yes, we would reach out to parents and we would allow the opportunity for them to come back because the circumstances would have changed at that point. And so we will space contingent, but if we're going to 3 feet, it should be much more doable. We would allow parents to do it at that time. We also have received questions about the flu vaccine that was put out by the governor's office and the Department of Elementary Secondary Education, children 6 months and older. That is not a district mandate. Right now, that is the mandate we are receiving. And we are working with different, we're working with the community, we're working with different vendors to try to assist people to get the flu vaccine, but certainly we've encouraged all along that parents keep their children's vaccines updated. Obviously, there are disqualifications for religious or medical reasons, and we have forms that can be submitted for that. But barring that, we have been directed to make sure that every student who's in person and remote, even if a student is remote, they are required to have the flu vaccine per the state to attend public school, even if it's remote, by December 31st. It does not include students who have withdrawn from the Easton Public Schools and are homeschooled. This is strictly for our students who are enrolled as students, whether they are attending hybrid, whether they are attending remotely. I also received a question about, originally at a school committee meeting, we had 82% of our parents had expressed an interest in their students attending their students attending the hybrid model. And then in the last newsletter, I put 85%. When I did the 82%, there's a pie chart that's represented in the survey, if anybody's seen that. But then since then we have been disaggregating the data, and there was an other option, and there were several people who put other and then wrote things in like, I want my student to be in person, or I would like my student in full time, or I believe my student is high needs, so they'll be there 4 days a week. That is the hybrid model. They just wanted to express a qualifying statement with that. And so when we go in and we count all of those individuals, it is right at 85% currently. So that is why I know people have seen a change in data. That is why, as we've looked at it more clearly, we see that that's what those responses were. In terms of start-stop procedures, this is something we've been working on regularly. We have all of our district nurses as well as the Board of Health helping us on this. People are looking for what those stop-start procedures are going to be. And what stop-start mean is, when would we close a school? When would we close a classroom? When would people be notified of a case? When would we close the district? These are all things that we don't want to decide on our own. We have our nurses working on it. They've completed 4 out of 6 potential scenarios. What I mean by scenarios are, if a student is on their way to school in a bus and they seem symptomatic, what's the protocol? If a student's in school and they are symptomatic, what's the protocol? If a student is home and somebody calls in about that, what's the so there are many different scenarios. We've sort of tried to parcel them down to manageable ones, and we have 6 sort of buckets that we're putting that in. And so they have 4 out of those 6 completed. A lot of great attention is being put to this. I am meeting with the Board of Health this week so that they can review it as well. We want to make sure we're not just putting out information that we're creating. We're certainly using a lot of research to do that, but we want to make sure our community partners are on board and that they agree with us and that they don't have anything to add or questions for us in how we might roll something out. And so that's what we're waiting for. It's not that we don't have one or we're not considering it. We're just making sure all of the proper experts are involved in giving us all of their input. We have been asked about our PPE and what we're providing. We have enough PPE for all faculty and staff. We do, the reason we suggest people bring in their own is because some people do not tolerate certain kinds of masks very well. A key component to making this work is making sure that people are comfortable. And so we encourage people to try different masks and use their own. The school committee mask policy is almost completely done, and it does mandate certain types of masks, certainly multiply masks, not using gaiters and so forth, as we've discussed in these meetings. So that is coming out. The school committee has to vote on that. There's a protocol. It's a requirement. They have to do certain number of readings and have a vote. It's just the parameters within which we're working. We're working as fast as we can. And so we do have that available though. If a student goes to get on a bus or comes into a building and doesn't have one on, they will be given one immediately. They will not be allowed into the building without it. It will be a surgical mask. And we do have enough for everyone. We put in an initial order of 78,000 masks. They're here right now. All of our PPE is here, except for we got some standing nurse tables so that they can move around very easily and talk to different students with plexiglass on it. Those are coming in September. Other than that, we have PPE, we have robes, we have gloves, gowns, we have gloves, we have shields, we have clear masks, we have the disinfectants, we have lots of plexiglass dividers in different places. So everything we ordered is in. What's not in but has a scheduled delivery date before school starts are our purifiers. People have been asking about MERV 13 filters, and again, we've talked about this many times, but I think it's important to repeat. The MERV, M-E-R-V filters are what people are recommending in ventilation systems. However, there is a Massachusetts consortium of facilities directors that is actually working with organizations like the MTA to give them some information about the potential inaccuracy of that information. The MERV 13 filter is a thicker version of the ones before it. So 13 is thicker than 8, 8 is thicker than 7, 7 is thicker than 5, for example. Our systems use, the majority of them, not all of them, use MERV 8 filters. If we had an engineer, we had 2 firms come and inspect, They advised us that if we were to put MERV 13 filters into our system, it would clog the system. They call it choking the system. It would restrict the airflow, and it actually would create not a safe environment. And so what they said was the same thing, put in the MERV 8 so that it can work at its optimal level. And we purchased hundreds upon hundreds of air purifiers, HEPA filter air purifiers, which are specific to filtering COVID and the coronavirus. So we have not only the MERV 8, which is very good, but we also have the air purifiers, which are going to be in every single classroom. There are a couple of areas that have units that take the MERV 13 filter. Those are the rooftop units in 3 of our schools. Any unit that will take a MERV 13 will get it. So we do have some, and we do have the MERV, I think RO was just getting rooftop units put on it today, actually, if people saw a crane when they were going by. So we've updated what needs to be updated, repaired what needs to be repaired, and put in the filters that are necessary. But I just want to make sure that it's clear to everybody that, yes, we are using MERV 8 filters in many places, but any place that has a MERV 8 filter also has an air purifier or an air scrubber, which is a HEPA filter. And so, you know, it's kind of a twofer. Plus we have windows being open, we have systems being purged and run ahead of time. We have them being run hours before school starts, hours before school's after ends. We're actually going to run them 24 hours straight for 2 weeks, just to purge the system completely. They've tightened all the gaskets, changed the belts, fixed motors. They've looked at every single motor and unit in the entire district, including every single classroom, every place there is one. And so they are identifying, the engineers identified spaces in buildings. Some spaces had, some buildings had 0, but some had a couple of spaces that we had been repurposing for other things, a closet being used as an office, for example, and they're clearly designated as non-used spaces. We're only going to be using them for storage. Principals are well aware of what those spaces are, and they've already worked on redirecting where that staff member or those students are going to be, so those will not be used. So we can say that all of the spaces in the buildings, we will not have people go into them until the air purifiers are in there. They need 1 hour to be operational. So as soon as they're in there, we're going to get them going right away. But everything else is right in line to be completed and working. Even the 3 elementary schools, which if they not only do a narrative of all recommendations, but then they do a chart which assesses the systems. And they very clearly in a couple of buildings put poor for the system. And so of course I asked them pointedly, what does that mean? Does that mean it works poorly for ventilation? And no, we were told that it just means it's in poor condition, which we know that. But the question we asked was, does it work effectively for what we need for this coronavirus specifically? And we were told it does. They do work properly. They don't have the best heat. They don't have the best air conditioning. Like there are some spaces that the air conditioning is just shut off because it's not working well. But in terms of the fresh air in and the exhaust out, they're all functioning. The DPW will replace anything that isn't functioning. They've got us on priority. They're going to replace anything that isn't functioning as soon as they know about it. I've asked them to create a spreadsheet for me that's in Google, so it's real time and I know exactly if something goes down. I've already talked to all the principals. If something goes down, have something in place, be able to move them to another area of the building, you know, what have you, to make sure everybody is safe and comfortable. So that's the most updated information we have on the ventilation. We are putting some parent computer resources together. People asked us, how can we help our students? Or how can my daycare provider or my parents help my students with their remote work, either when they're working hybrid or remotely? And we are putting information together for parents. There's a technology page that is available with helpful information. We'll make sure we keep repeating that in the newsletter. Time on learning. People have asked, if we only have a 4.5-hour day, how are we meeting the time on learning requirements? We are counting the afternoon hours. They're not in school during that time, but those are hours. Some of that work is going to be live, and some of it is going to be asynchronous, but it still absolutely counts for time on learning. So we meet the minimum time on learning for all of our students this year, regardless of whether they're in remote or whether they're in hybrid. I'm almost done. I actually think that's it. We are working on childcare for our staff members. For parents of our students who are concerned about childcare, we have told them that the YMCA in Maplewood have programs that they're putting together. We were actually talking to food service today because we're trying to figure out ways that our free and reduced students can also receive lunch if they're working. If they are a remote student, we want to make sure they still have access to those services. So there are lots of things that we are still working on, but things are developing quickly. But those are frequently asked questions. None of those are actually new. They're just things that we are working on that I will add to the FAQs. I think they were great questions, and I'm going to continue answering questions as I get them.
Okay, questions, ladies? Anybody? Okay, I have a question. You were talking about the closet offices. I met one of the new teachers today, and I guess originally she should have been in a closet, but she said something about she could be in there for 15 minutes at a time, and I was thinking, it shouldn't be any minutes at a time. So you're saying that the principals are getting her a space, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we're saying that they can use it as storage. It was meant to be a closet, so it's safe to go in as a closet. So they can keep materials in there. If they want to go in and take something out or go and put something in, they can. But we don't want anybody working in there.
Okay. And then the ventilation report, I know we talked about this last week. So right now, as you're talking about all this ventilation, the MERV filters and the HEPA air purifiers and filters. So this would make our ventilation report be adequate, correct?
It's actually above adequate according to our town HVAC person and our town safety officer who work for the DPW. They have confirmed that we have gone in excess of many of the things in the report. What I've asked them to do, actually, I want it to be as clear as possible, and I don't want to miss anything either. So I've asked them to go through, and there are a lot of things in the report that are, you can tell they're general recommendations that they put in every report, and that's fine. We do all of them. According to them, all of the weekly, daily, and monthly maintenance we already do. We're actually, we have a general rule of kind of double everything at this point. The HEPA filters, for example, they require replacement after 5 years. We're doing it after 2.5. Other ones have, if it's a year, we'll do it in 6 months. Filters in the classroom, if they're 3 months, we'll do it in 6 weeks. So we're doing everything twice as often. I just want to be more safe than sorry, obviously. So we're doing everything. I'm asking them to use like double the general rule of thumb for things. They told us that we satisfied everything in that report and went over a lot of it. So just for clarity, and that's why what I will present to you, I've asked them to go through and literally put a check mark next to everything they have actually done. I just want to make sure their eyes are on it. I trust them, but I want to make sure their eyes are on it and they're confirming this has been done, or this is something we always do regularly, and it's scheduled for this date because we just did it on this date, kind of thing. They did say there were 2 things in the report that they couldn't just do a clear check off. One is the MERV 13 filters, which is why we're getting the air purifiers. So that is a check off because the engineer said in the absence of MERV 13, you need an air purifier. So we did that. The second thing was there was something, a recommendation. You may want to use a fogger cleaner in the ducts. The DPW did not say they couldn't do that. They said that it was their recommendation that it's not necessary. They don't feel as though the particular thing that they were asking for is very effective, but they said they'd be more than happy to do it. We have time to do it. They can get the materials to do it. It's not a problem. And so in our conversations, I'm saying, you know, if people are not comfortable with not doing it, absolutely, of course, we'll do it. It doesn't matter if it's overkill, if it's going to make people feel more comfortable, or if in any way it makes them safer, we're going to do it. So we feel as though those are the two things. Those are the only two things in the entire report that they said were, you know, a variant of some sort.
Thank you. So each classroom will either have a MERV filter or a HEPA filter. Is that
They
correct?
all have, no, they all have MERV filters, but they're going to also have a HEPA filter.
Okay, so every classroom is going to have a MERV filter and a HEPA filter.
Yes.
Okay.
Not MERV
thank you.
13 though, because the units don't take them, and that's the
No,
purpose of the
the MERV
HEPA
8,
filter.
the MERV 8 you
Yeah.
said, right?
The HEPAs
MERV
are,
8.
the HEPAs, there's, you know, people, I'm sure, Caroline, you're aware of this research. There are also 3 different sorts of transmission: the fomites, the droplets, and the aerosol. The aerosol is of most concern, and the HEPA filters are actually the most effective at combating the aerosols. They clean the aerosols more than anything else. So we're very happy about getting them, honestly. We were able to get that through our federal grant money.
Okay. And then I noticed today when I was at RO, all the bubblers are being replaced with with water stations. Is that what that is?
Yes, we were able to secure a grant, a water grant, as well as some other federal grant money to replace bubblers. We really don't want children utilizing bubblers or putting their mouth close to bubblers, whether they touch it or not. And so to discourage that, we've closed them all, and we are putting in bottle fillers. And so we've asked parents to have a lot of students come with bottles anyway, personal water bottles. We're asking them to bring personal water bottles. We have disposable cups for any student that doesn't have one, of course, and so water will be available to anybody. Those are, you said installed, because as you saw, they are literally installed into the wall. And so at the 3 pre-K to 2 schools, we aren't doing that. Instead, we're getting the portable water filters. We had those last year, and we have them again. So the spring water devices, not filters, the spring water devices.
Dispensers.
Dispensers, thank you. So every school will have that so that the students aren't using the bubblers. And for some reason that hasn't been something that people have asked us about, but we were very concerned about students putting their mouths anywhere near a bubbler, but we took care of that anyway.
Okay, I watched the 4th grade video with Miss St. Martin and from RO. My question is, so Miss St. Martin had the kids in front of her, the kids on the computer. She was doing a lesson and she had somebody with her. Is that going to be the norm for every class in every room in the Easton Public Schools?
So you're talking about a video of a teacher utilizing a facilitator. A facilitator traditionally is going to be somebody who literally does what Chrissy's doing. Chrissy, are there any questions in the chat? And then she tells us and then reads them for us. Or she'll mute somebody if they're having trouble or there's feedback. It's literally facilitating the technology only. There are some staff members who have said they don't want a facilitator. We are not going to force a facilitator on anybody that doesn't want to use it. We're also very open to them utilizing that person in different ways, depending who the person is. So for example, in the video you saw a teacher who was teaching the class and had the laptop on a moving device. and would talk to the class at home and would talk to the class and use the facilitator for some technology stuff, but then just had them, because she was talking to both at the same time, she had that person move about the room and just make sure, is everybody on their computer appropriately? Does anybody need help? Did anybody time out? Something like that. That's fine. We don't want to discourage that sort of use. We're happy to encourage creative use of it, whatever works for staff members. What people have been asking is, one person, are Chrissy and I going to be attached to each other all day long? And that's not necessarily the case across the district, because, well, for example, the secondary students, they have periods, and elementary they just have set amounts of time, like an ELA block or a math block. It's possible that they may have a facilitator for an ELA block and somebody different for a math block. Or at the high school, they may have somebody for their freshman classes as a facilitator, and then somebody different for sophomore classes. They really just need a short amount of time in the beginning to consult with one another in terms of planning, because this is not this isn't co-teaching. This isn't a co-teaching model. It's more like, if Chrissy's going to facilitate on the computer, I say, I would like to know if anybody has a question in the chat, please let me know. If you find that there's a lot of feedback, please mute somebody until we can figure out how to fix it. What are their agreements going to be about the technology in the classroom? If they're going to do it a different way. So for example, you saw in Miss St. Martin's classroom, the facilitator moved about the room to see if kids were on while she talked to kids who were working remotely. That's fine too. That will be their communication with one another. They don't really need to, for the technology piece, they don't need to plan before class begins or plan a lesson together, because that person is not teaching. They're not teaching anything. Now, normally we have paraprofessionals, interventionists, and learning specialists in different classrooms. And they're there for a very specific reason, because there's need in that room. It may be that a paraprofessional is going to be in a room that they normally would have been scheduled in to work with students, but now they have half the students, and some of those students are at home. So that might be a different conversation. The paraprofessional may do the utilization on the computer, but then be a paraprofessional in the classroom also. We're not asking them to teach a class. You know, nobody's going to be doing above or what their requirements are now. A paraprofessional traditionally could work with a group of students and say, for example, you know, I'm going to help you fill out this worksheet, or we're going to recite the alphabet, or I'm going to read this story to you. That's something that they do now. This would just be doing it on the computer with the kids who are at home, while the teacher is perhaps doing it in the classroom. It's sort of like a facilitator plus. It's a little bit enhanced, but that's because they have a paraprofessional in their room. No, not everyone will have a paraprofessional. Not everyone will have a learning specialist or an interventionist. They haven't in the past. That's not how the model works. But we're hoping that everybody who wants someone to help them with the computers is able to have somebody help them. If it's just to help them with the computer because they didn't traditionally have that person in their classroom, then we're hoping to schedule people so that that is possible. And that's why it would be possible if Chrissy and I had met before, really for a short amount of time, we could talk about how we wanted to handle the facilitation of the technology. And then we don't need to meet before every class when she comes in. She knows how we're going to be doing it in that class. The others, that does require planning. To be honest, in the past, they haven't had a lot of planning time with one another. We envision that with the afternoon session, the afternoons after the children are dismissed, and on the Wednesdays, we actually envision that people are going to have more opportunity to plan with one another and maintain their planning periods than before. So we're hoping that they're going to have an opportunity to be creative if they want to with that other professional who's in the room. But we've talked about utilizing other professionals, clerical aides, for example. Again, a clerical aide traditionally hasn't helped a student, but they have worked with technology. So they could be the technology assistant. We're not going to ask them to go above and beyond what they typically would do. A library aide at the elementary schools has supervised children. They have read stories to children and done small activities with them. they could do that on the computer because it's the same thing. They're just doing it electronically. So we have created a job description for facilitators. We're going to be sharing that with everybody. We want to make sure we share it with all unions first, and they have it. So we just want to make sure that we explain this the best way we can to people, help them troubleshoot the best way they can. Do we have a staff member? To go back to the beginning, do we have one staff member dedicated? No, that would be doubling our staff. We don't have that, but it is certainly possible in other ways. We're working on that right now. If we need to hire subs to help us with that, we have federal money to help with subs to help with that. The technology piece. Obviously, we already have people in the paraprofessional, interventionist, and learning specialist positions, and they obviously need to complete all of their hours of service to students, and we will make sure that that happens.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Questions for Dr. Cabral? Wow.
I think we've all been living this daily, hourly, minute by minute.
Yeah. Caroline, did you have a question?
This is more of just a little comment. I had read a number of articles a couple of months ago, naturally, about soap, sudsy soap, destroying the lipid layer of the virus very effectively. And in fact, a number of infectious disease doctors have said that hand washing with soap and water for the 20 seconds is actually more effective than using Purell, or because it's more thorough, and it's also safer over time. You know, if you have to do things multiple times, using soap and water is a safer choice, particularly for children. So I was actually surprised to see a lot of people questioning why we weren't having children disinfect or you know, sanitize their desks, because soap and water is very effective. And that's been something that all of these specialists have been talking about for quite some time. I just wanted to kind of add on to what Leisha said about that.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for that update. All right.
Do you want me to answer any public questions?
Oh,
wait?
are there any Q&As?
Yes.
Go ahead, Chrissy.
Public comment was next, so that's what I figured I would wait for.
Oh,
Public
sorry.
That's okay.
Budget is next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're
You're right.
do it
Okay. You want the questions first?
if they go along with the reopening, yes.
Okay. My name is Marilyn Burton. I live at 28 Center Street. I'm asking this question for many of us that have students that are hoping to attend the hybrid model at the high school, depending on the safety protocols that are being used. I'm concerned about the desk usage in the classrooms. Who is responsible for cleaning the desks in between classes, and what is being used to clean them? So that was already stated.
Well, not really. The kids clean it, right? Are the kids cleaning, or the teachers, or
The
who's
students.
cleaning the desk?
The students. Yes.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
providing them with soapy water, and if a parent wants them to use a wipe, we can provide it, or they can provide it as long as they contact Dave Twombly and they only use the kinds that we have been permitted to use.
So even first and second grade, they'll do their desks with soapy
If a
water.
parent wants to overrule that and they want their child to use a wipe, they can, but we have
No, I guess what I mean is, no, that's fine. Okay, I'm all set. Go ahead.
Holly Butler, 927 Washington. When the school committee starts meeting in person, will they continue to Zoom meetings? Oh, I could have waited till public comment for that. Sorry.
I would like to comment on that, please. I am thinking, I got a email from Mike Cardoza, Mike, I think, that the auditorium is ready to go. We could be on the stage 6 feet apart. I know all my fellow members are not ready to come back, but I would say that we would be doing a hybrid in the future, and that I might be the only one on the stage and you guys might be on the Zoom meeting, but it's possible. So we'll talk about that later, but there's no decision yet.
When you say not ready, you're referring to a medical consideration that we are allowing for students and staff as well. You don't mean not ready as in no one wants to.
No, I just mean that we could go to a hybrid meeting. We could do some people in the auditorium and some people on the Zoom, which we would put up on the screen.
I was kind of interpreting the question as to however we're meeting going forward, if we could still do Zoom so people would have more access to our meetings, which I think is a great idea.
And that's exactly what I'm saying, because I know there's members here that aren't ready to enter a building. And I think Zoom is great. We've gotten great participation, but we can't have all those people in a live meeting. It can't happen. Jen, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think another consideration is that we're able to have people in Zoom under a remote meeting procedure that's authorized by the governor through an emergency order. So I think we would just need to be careful to make sure that if we resume live meetings, that that option to have people participate via Zoom is still an option, because, you know, it wasn't before. It clearly would have been a wonderful option to have had many, you know, for all these years, right? To have people be able to ask questions and fully participate versus just watching a live stream or watching on ECAT when we were meeting in person. But where that was not allowed in open meeting law before, I just think we need to be careful about making sure that there's no issue there.
Yeah, we'll need to check the legality of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to comment on that question because I was thinking about that today. So, okay, Chrissy, any more?
Yes, we have 7 more questions. However, I'm not sure. They could wait till public comment if you want to, or do you want me to read them now?
Nope, public comment. Caroline?
Oh, I was just going to add to the previous, your comment earlier about, you know, when all or some of us meet in person. I think that this is something for the Mass Association of School Committees to look into with the governor, with the legislature, et cetera, because I agree 100%. We've had better participation, offering Zoom attendance than we ever have. And I think that regardless of what happens in terms of an actual emergency order, I'm hoping that the legislature or governor or whoever needs to make that legal will do so. And I think advocacy is indicated in this case because it seems to increase public participation significantly.
Okay.
That's all, since you were already on the subject.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll get to those other questions in a moment. We're going to move on to number 7, budget update. Dr. Cabral.
I do not have a budget update for you. Nothing has changed. We're still watching to see if there's going to be a 4th stimulus package from the federal government. We're certainly hoping there is, because the great majority of the funding we have, first of all, is dwindling. You've heard about some of the purchases we've made. They've all been worth it. We don't want to scrimp when it comes to safety, but that is dwindling, and most of it expires December 31st. So we're certainly hoping, especially for things like extra nurses that we're hiring. I faltered because they may have even been hired already. I'm not sure where it is in the process. The head nurse is taking care of that. But we have, custodians that are going to be needed, and very likely could be needed after December. So we're certainly hoping that 4th package comes through. We're advocating with our delegation, any influence that they have. So I certainly would recommend that if anyone has political contacts that they work with or are politically involved, you certainly reach out to your delegation and ask them to support that.
Thank you. Okay, number 8. Now, Chrissy, public comment. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. John Feeney, 191 Center Street. I want to thank the school committee for giving students the choice of whether to go back in person or learn remotely. As you know, that takes a lot of stress off of many students and their families. I'm curious about whether the option to teach remotely was given to teachers because I am concerned about morale. I'm sure a lot of teachers are stressed about going back to school.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because it's true. A lot of people are stressed, and we appreciate your acknowledgement of that. We hope that you will be very supportive of these staff members. They have a lot on their plates. Every staff member we have, approximately 580 staff members was provided a staff accommodation form where they could indicate if they were interested in a remote option. I am meeting individually with every single person who put that down, just to make sure. There's a lot of federal laws and things to navigate, and we really didn't want to throw reams, more than reams, volumes of information at people and have them try to figure out what applies to them and what doesn't. And so the payroll director and I are meeting individually with people to help them navigate that. How can we help them? What is the issue? Is there a condition? Can we direct them to services? Can we direct them to accommodations? Can we direct them to remote learning? Is there a law that suits their purpose? Because we can't, because of our reporting requirements, because of the way that the federal grant money is structured, it's very different than it was in the past. I was teaching, 9 years ago, I was teaching. Very different than back then. It is not a decision that I make. It has to fall into one of the quote unquote buckets of laws. And so I try to take people through those so that they understand where they would fit, and we help them get what they need. So every single person that put that down, I'm meeting with them individually. We had out of 580 staff members, we had 31 total that requested that, and I'm meeting with all of them to see how we can help them. So yes, the answer is of course, for staff, for students, and also for school committee.
Maria Palma, 37 Greenfield Street. Are children of EPS employees able to attend both cohorts? If so, when will they be able to register for that?
So at the last school committee meeting, the school committee did approve that. I recommended that we allow staff, not just teachers, but all staff members, to have their students attend both cohorts to help with childcare. They're essential employees as far as I'm concerned. And if we don't have them, we don't have school for anyone. So we are going to open up that option. It is in tandem with something else though. I am actually going to be sending out a survey to staff to determine where are your students. They may be working in one school, but their children are somewhere else. So we're going to have a survey so that people can fill that out. However, what I'm waiting on is, you may have heard that the commissioner is also trying to see if he can make this happen at the state level. So it happens across districts. Students from other districts don't come here, they stay in their home district. But for example, if we have an employee who lives in, I used Mansfield as an example just because it's right next door. If we have an employee that lives in Mansfield, can their student go to their sessions? And they do have high need students going, even though they're in a remote model to begin. Can they attend those sessions, and it will serve as childcare for them? And we would accept any students who are children who live in our town that live in Mansfield, for example. We're waiting to hear if that passes at the state level. In case it doesn't, I have had multiple meetings with many of my superintendent colleagues. We've come up with multiple spreadsheets on this of all the districts that are willing to participate in that sort of a reciprocal agreement. And again, at the last school committee meeting, they did this very supportive school committee did support us doing that as well, space permitting. And so obviously it depends what grade level, it depends if there are too many students in that cohort. And I also talked to the principals about, really monitoring how many students are in each of those cohorts. So for example, if they have, they can't have an inordinate amount of students. If they have too many students that are in cohort A that are also attending in cohort B, that we could perhaps set up an alternate area where students could be supervised and they could do their remote work from that class. So they're still getting the care, but they're remoting into the class just as they would if they would be home. So from a childcare perspective, it doesn't make a difference. We're trying to make that happen for people. But the reason I haven't, I don't want to complicate the answer, but the reason I haven't sent out the staff email yet is because I would like to use the opportunity to also at the same time say, these districts are participating reciprocally with us. Do you have children who go there? And also collect that information. So we will be doing that soon.
Laura Ayasi, 98 Rockland Street. Facilitators in every class means we need 2 teachers, adults for every class. How will these positions be filled?
Right, again, that will be, it could be by period. So a teacher at the high school, for example, may have a facilitator for a few periods and a different one for other periods. But we're talking with all of our units with, again, because it's literally what Chrissy's doing right now, facilitating the technology. We are tapping into all of our employees and talking to them. I was talking to food service workers today who are interested in helping with that if they attend our professional development and have the capacity to do so. So, and as I said earlier, when we talked about this, if we need to hire substitutes for this, we will, because our federal grant money allows that. It doesn't allow us to hire staff because, as I said, it ends in December. That's one of the reasons. And we would have to lay them off, but we can get subs. And so we are prepared to do that.
Okay. Jen and Tebby, 5 Judith Road. Not a topic covered tonight, but wondering if there will be fire drills scheduled this year and how they will be approached.
That's a great question. I actually have communicated with both the fire department and the police department. We have talked about the drills, and the fire department did confirm that the state laws that we currently follow are still in place. That means within a certain number of days at the beginning of the school year, we have to hold fire drills, and we also have to hold them with both cohorts. So we actually are going to have to hold more fire drills than typical because we have to make sure that both cohorts participate. That information was already communicated to all of the school principals, and they're aware of that. We will keep students. So again, in order to keep with the social distancing, we will keep students 6 feet apart as they go through the hallways. And some of the things we're doing right now is working on how we're teaching children to do that. The building plans talk about how to do that. And so they would do that in a fire drill as well.
Gretchen Stairs, 5 Shagbark. Is there any shareable information regarding the EMS, OA, RO, instrumental, and choral music programs?
That's a great question too. Well, they're all good questions. So we have a new director for our music program, department chair, Jeff Benson. We're very happy to welcome him on board. He certainly had very big shoes to fill, and we think he's up to the challenge. He has presented us with a plan, and so we are running it by the Board of Health. And I've told the school committee that any of the plans we come up with will be run by them as well. And so as soon as we're able to do that, we will put that plan out.
Lauren Loomis, 4 Abbey Road. Can you please clarify who and what is deep cleaning and disinfecting the building on Wednesday and weekends? Does the electrostatic cleaning process clean all surfaces or just the air?
So the custodians have been specially trained to do this, and it's the custodians only that will be doing it. They do it when students and staff are gone for the day, which is the reason for our early release on Wednesdays. They have PPE, and they have backpack units with a wand where they literally put out this very concentrated disinfectant. So the most, it does kill the COVID virus, and it has a negative charge. And what that negative charge does, so it's not just spraying on it, it's actually charged. And then what the negative charge does is it creates this arc around anything that it is sprayed on and clings to it. And then it has a dwell time, which means a time that it has to be on for it to sufficiently work and kill the virus, which is 15 minutes if it's applied appropriately. It will be plenty of time before staff comes in, and it will be dried and safe. It is food grade. And so the warnings that we get on the MSDS sheets for that are strictly for those professionals who are applying it. They are aware of that, and as I said, they have the appropriate PPE, and they have had appropriate training in how to do that. We are able to cover larger areas with a very potent disinfectant in that way. And so because it clings to surfaces, if you spray a table, for example, it will actually cling to the metal legs, it will cling to the underside of the table, it will go around surfaces, and it actually attaches. so that it kills the germs, the virus, excuse me. So it is a superior product, and we have invested quite a bit between last year and this year to have them. Again, we think that safety is worth the investment. And so regular cleaning, of course, will still be done, but then it will have that deep disinfection as well. And is Wednesdays and Saturdays in between cohorts. And whenever necessary, those electrostatic sprayers are at the schools. So if we have a situation where we have a confirmed case somewhere, we will make sure that that is obviously done, or any concern that somebody has. All the custodians know how to use the devices and have them at their disposal all day long. So we want to avoid using it when people are in the building. It's just, we want to be more safe than sorry. So it will be done as frequently as necessary.
Lauren Noller, 51 North Main Street. In regards to facilitators, especially considering these positions are yet to be assigned, how would it be possible for them to be moving from classroom to classroom without cross-contaminating cohorts?
So the facilitator is, we're going to try to confine them to as many classes as possible. Everything that we're doing, we're making the smallest cohort size possible. So in our elementary schools, for example, we can keep it to 1 class. In our upper elementary, we keep it to 2 classes. In middle schools, we keep it to a team. And in high school, we keep it to keeping them from the common areas. So we're working on scheduling right now. Schedules are not complete, and we're going to do the very best we can to minimize the amount of places anybody goes for that exact reason, for contact tracing.
Okay. Laura Ayasi, 98 Rockland Street. If the school committee isn't comfortable with meeting in person with a 6-foot distance, is it reasonable to ask teachers to be in a class half filled with students? Zoom connection for the public can still be provided.
So we do allow for a medical issue for students, for staff members, and the school committee they're humans and have medical issues as well. So I don't share with the public what any number of people or what particular conditions are. And I won't do that with staff or students either, but people are people. And no matter what the venue is, we have to have an accommodation for people that require remote. And so we do that for everyone, including staff.
Jackie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so I think this may go towards the, well, if schools were safe, then why isn't the school committee coming back to the schools? And I just wanted to remind people that these plans that are being worked on for students to come back have been worked on for months by our administrators, our teachers, staff members, the Board of Health, town officials, and school committee members. And the reason we've been working so hard to come up with a plan to allow students to come back, as Dr. Cabral and Mrs. Pruitt have discussed many times, is that there are children who are experiencing distress and trauma triggered by the social isolation or the lack of therapeutic services usually provided in school. There are children that have open cases with DCF, and without regular supervision by school staff, they're not being seen by a trusted adult. There are a number of students who rely on our schools for breakfast and lunch. There are children who need therapeutic services such as physical therapy or speech therapy that are very difficult to replicate in a remote environment. For many of these reasons, we are working to try to get our kids back in school. Many of these services cannot be provided in the same way remotely. Whether the school committee meets in person or meets in Zoom, we can still do our jobs in the same manner. It doesn't affect our ability to do our jobs. So I don't want you to think that the reason we are not meeting in person is because we don't feel the schools are safe. That's not the case. We believe the schools should be restricted in who goes in and who is allowed in. So we don't need to be there, so we shouldn't be there. At least that's the way that I feel. But we wouldn't be sending anyone back into the schools if we didn't think that they were as safe as can be under these circumstances. And we just really feel like the children, many of our children, really need to be back in that setting. That's it.
Thank you, Jackie. Chrissy, any more questions?
Yes. Cindy Hall, 23 High Street. Are teachers able to use sick time with a doctor's note?
It totally depends. It depends on the person. That's why I'm devoting literally a week and a half to meet with everyone individually. There are different laws. There's FFCRA, there's FMLA, there's ADA. It depends what the condition is and what law it fits under. That's what I'm trying to help staff members navigate, and that's why I'm meeting with them.
Tara Bailey, 40 Kingsbrook. I've heard other towns are keeping twins together. Will this happen, or are they able to be in separate classes?
Where people are being scheduled is not a decision that we're making at the district level. I have not directed principals to do anything in particular with twins. So I would contact the school and talk about that with the school principal.
Elaine Maliff, if you're out there, I see your address and your name, but there's no, oh, here we go. Here's your question. Sorry, it's further down. Elaine Maliff, 231 Depot Street. At EMS and OA, the students change classrooms every period. How or who will clean the desk as one student leaves and another student comes in?
So as we discussed earlier, there's going to be the soapy water, and we discussed the reasons for the soapy water that students will use to clean their desks. If the parent feels that that isn't sufficient and they want their child to use the disinfecting wipes, they can use the disinfecting wipes.
Katie Wright, 6 Sharon Drive. To piggyback off of John Feeney's question, if a teacher has a doctor's note needing to work remotely, are they allowed to work fully remote, or are they only offered accommodations so they can teach in the building?
Okay, so I'll explain what I've explained in the meetings with the staff members. So these are the specific laws. There's FFCRA, and I go through all of these with everyone. This is just to help you understand why it's different for each person. Under FFCRA, there's something called EPSLA, EPSLA. That is only applies to somebody who has COVID, has quarantined for COVID, is taking care of someone who's has COVID. It's very specific. That is for a 10-day leave. If that is not applicable, there's FFCRA for childcare. If they have a son or daughter that has no childcare available, not that they don't want to send their child to childcare, but they legitimately don't have childcare, which is a concern, arguably. They have up to 12 weeks to receive 2/3 of their pay for a maximum of $200 a day for 12 weeks. So if it was a childcare issue, I would direct them to that as an opportunity. They don't necessarily have to work remote. They have other benefits. And that's what I'm trying to help people understand. Maybe they don't want to work remotely. They have a childcare problem and they want to benefit so they can still get some portion of their payment. I would explain that to them. Then there's FMLA. FMLA is a 12-week period where if someone is, it's called serious medical condition, they're incapacitated in some way. So if COVID wasn't here, they wouldn't be going to work. So it doesn't have to do with the fact that COVID is here. They just wouldn't be going to work because this is what we use, for example, for women who have a maternity leave. Obviously, they can't go to work. They have a physical disability a week after giving birth. And so they have 12 weeks that their job is reserved. That's really a benefit for people. They can use 8 weeks of, according to now that's a law. According to the district contract, they can use 8 paid sick days if they've accrued them for that. The law is unpaid. FMLA is unpaid, but we have an enhanced option in our contract. Some of them, not all of them. This is also why I meet with people, because if in different contracts, different things apply to them. And so I don't confound it with things in different contracts for them. And so I let them know about the FMLA option if that applies. They may want to make use of that. If they need to take care of someone, perhaps it's not themselves. Perhaps they are the primary caregivers for someone and they have to take them back and forth to chemotherapy appointments, for example, and nobody else can do that. They have a benefit for that, and I want to make sure they know they have a benefit for that. FMLA, however, depending on what contract they're in, some people do not get paid if it's a family member, and they do get paid if it is a family member. It depends on the contract. I have to go by the contract. I cannot violate any of our 6 collective bargaining contracts or 30 negotiated contracts. And then finally, we have the ADA, Americans with Disabilities. And I tell everybody about this option as well, because many people think, well, I don't feel like I have a disability. I just have something that would put me at risk if I go to work because I have a condition that puts me at risk. They don't fall into FMLA because they, under normal circumstances, they would go to work. They're functional. They just have an enhanced risk of coming down with COVID. In that case, I work with them. There's actually 2 sheets of paper of questions that I have to ask them. It's a federal mandate. It's not at my discretion. And so I go through the questions and I ask them, what is the disability? And I'm required to ask them whether they're going to get remote or not. I am required by the law to ask them, is there any accommodation that can suit your need and make it possible for you to go to work? For example, I've been told, you know, I have a problem with first or second or kindergartners not being able to, not having to wear masks. And so I was able to clarify, well, they are wearing masks. Okay, that's the accommodation. And I might say, listen, feel comfortable too. We don't want you to just be safe. We want you to be comfortable when you come back. Can I offer you a shield to go over your mask as well? Is there something else that we can offer that will help you? And I offer accommodations for them. They don't have to take it, but I'm trying to help them understand what else is available. And I ask them to let me know if there's anything they can think of that would also be helpful. And under the ADA, you know, if somebody, there are certain rules that I can't violate. The ADA, for example, does not allow for family members. It doesn't allow, you know, for someone who is living with a spouse, for example, that has a serious illness. That's not a personal decision of mine. That is a law. That doesn't mean we will necessarily rule out remote. And I've told everyone that I've met that that is the case. We, under our current plan, don't have remote opportunities, but we're willing to work with people to figure out what is their role, what school are they in, can we make it happen? And I've told everybody that same thing. And that's why I've told people when we meet, this is not I'm not going to be telling you a decision at the end of this meeting. This is information gathering, and it's information for you to ask questions. And then I'm going to meet with the principals and say, how many remote students do we have coming in? How many staff do we have coming in? How many opportunities do we have for remote? And then I'm going to take a look. Anybody that, if somebody tells me they're going through cancer treatment and they might die if they come to school, I want to make sure that if we have a remote opportunity, I'm providing it to that person. Now, I understand there are others who are uncomfortable with coming back, and I'm working my very hardest to make sure they get accommodations as well, up to and including remote. But I can't guarantee it because we don't even have any remote options right now. And I won't know that until after I meet with the principals and after I look at the schedules and after we determine what is needed at each grade level and how many requests we have at each grade level. So I've been very transparent with that with everybody that I've met. I've been very transparent with that with every single union that I've spoken to about it. And I'm obviously, I'm presuming they're communicating that to their unit members. And I'm happy to answer that as many times as I possibly can, because it is very stressful for people. And I want to make sure they have all of the information that they need. But I will say, we need to make sure people have correct information before they make determinations about their comfort level. And I want to make sure that I'm available, and I've given my cell phone number to everybody on the planet to call me and let me know if they have specific concerns, because I want to address them. Because I am very sincere in saying, we don't just want people to come back safely. We want them to come back safely and comfortably. But there's a lot of things we can do between coming in full and coming in remote that can make them feel more comfortable. And it's my responsibility to let them know what those things are and to offer it to them. And if we have remote opportunities, we are absolutely going to offer them. But I have to say that under the law, I need to work with our colleagues who fall under one of those provisions first. And then we'll work with everybody after that to do the very best we can. But to say anybody who asks will get it right now, I cannot answer until I see the schedules. I'm saying that in good faith. I'm saying that so that I'm not misleading. I'm saying that to be transparent. I'm saying that in all sincerity. We will do our very best. But I need more information before I'm able to do that. And I understand people want an answer now. The universe isn't giving us the information we need to make those decisions. And I will get it to you as soon as it's humanly possible. And so that's what we've been doing. That's what I've been communicating. And I'm happy to repeat that as many times or ask more clarifying questions if that's necessary.
I also just want to add that while these meetings are occurring, we're also receiving an astronomical amount of data as far as the family survey that was closed. We actually did leave it open over the weekend, so that information is now coming and we're disaggregating that. So looking at how many students are remote exactly, there are families that answered multiple times for their one child. So we're sorting through that data right now. And that all that data plus what Dr. Cabral is doing comes together, and we're hoping as soon as possible to get that information out to everyone, but it is taking time. And you can see we're here, you know, we're not working during this time because this is extremely important. So Laura Ayasi, 98 Rockland Street. So this does go along with the question, what you just answered, but there is a little bit more information she's seeking. Please clarify the question about teachers having the option of remote teaching. The teachers were given the option of remote teaching only if they have a documented medical risk, not simply because they feel more comfortable with being in the classroom, as the students were given their choice. Also, is it true that they may not be in their designated teaching role, but will find a different role from home? But will fill a different role from home, sorry.
Okay, so I'm looking at the staff feedback form right now. And the question says, medical leave / accommodations request. And then it says, I recognize there may be very limited remote assignments, but I would like to be considered for one if available. Anybody that has called me that have asked for an appointment, I've given it to them. I've told every unit many times that if they have members that need to talk to me to make an appointment, I'm meeting with every single person that's requested an appointment for whatever reason.
Lisa Reska.
Oh, was there more to that?
Oh, she asked, is it true that they may not be in their designated teaching role, but will fill a different role from home?
Well, that depends. If people are looking for us to create opportunities, possibly, I don't know. I can't guarantee, for example, that somebody who teaches a particular grade or a particular subject, if they don't have a medical need of any kind, I can't guarantee that they will have a remote assignment, but I'm trying to work creatively to provide opportunities for people who are so uncomfortable. If that requires me to be creative and say, let's try to use you in this way, they don't have to do it, of course not. But that's simply our attempt at trying to create opportunities for people who are concerned. That's all that is. We're not going to force people to do anything different. If they've heard that that is the case, then I probably offered a creative opportunity for someone. They don't have to take advantage of it, but in all sincerity, I'm trying the best I can to accommodate every staff member, and sometimes we don't have a need for that at that grade level, and if I can offer something else, I will. But they absolutely don't have to take it. That is just our attempt to try to accommodate people and nothing else.
Lisa Reska, 4 Harvey Lane. Can you clarify what is happening in each building regarding full and half-day kindergarten and teachers?
Yes, we have had a great number of people who have withdrawn their children from kindergarten. That's very common across the state, and it's to be expected. Children are not required. It's not compulsory in Massachusetts for children to be in kindergarten. So it's not surprising that several parents maybe, I don't know what's going on with their work. Maybe they want to stay home with their children. Maybe they're doing something else, but they're not required to send them. And so many parents are keeping their children home, and many other parents are moving from full day kindergarten to half day kindergarten. It is so many people that we actually have, if we look at our numbers, it's very clear that we have a reduction of one teacher at each of the schools for kindergarten. We have no desire to eliminate any staff member and are doing everything we can to avoid that. So 3 full classes now have become 3 half classes based on parent requests and the fact that they unenrolled their student from full day kindergarten. In order to save those positions, because we need every staff member, we want every staff member to stay on board, and we need every staff member in the event that these students go back to full day kindergarten. We have decided that we are willing to sacrifice in other areas to make sure that we keep them, because obviously those half-day students are not paying tuition anymore. So we lose the revenue that pays for half of all of our kindergarten teachers. We feel it's important enough to keep all of our kindergarten teachers that we are sacrificing in other areas in order to keep them all on board full time. I've spoken to both the union and the principals and explained to them what I'm sure has been communicated out and perhaps is the cause for the question, that because of that, again, we will be as creative as it takes to keep these people on board so we don't have to lay them off. We are gonna look at taking 3 of the people that would have been eliminated and allow them to teach half-day kindergarten and have another duty in the other part, whether it is co-teaching or working with other teachers. Again, no one is forced to do that. We are not forcing anybody to take that option. Our alternative is to reduce the positions. We literally do not have the caseload to have those teachers present. We don't want to do that. And so this is simply our creative attempt at trying to ensure the security of all of our staff members, keep them on board, and find something alternate for them to do. I was sure to run this by the union before considering it. I certainly wasn't going to discuss it publicly because we don't have a CBA, an agreement yet, but I'm asked the question and feel as though I have to answer it. That is what we're doing. We are trying to save positions. If people do not want an alternative placement, we're not forcing them to take it by any means. We certainly hope they do. We'd love to keep them on board. We want to keep working with them. We want to keep them in the program, in the district, but certainly it's not being forced on anyone.
We also see that this is an opportunity too for some more intervention for some of our students. And also this is temporary. We are predicting that our full day enrollment, once this is over, will be back to where it is. So this is a temporary 1-year modification that we are anticipating. And in order to, this is in order to maintain the staffing, because we know that we will need those teachers back. And we do have pretty fantastic kindergarten teachers. We want to make sure that we are keeping them here with us and not losing them to other districts. And especially knowing that this is just temporary.
Again, no one will be forced to do that. We're trying to offer them an opportunity to not be reduced.
That's all the questions I have here.
Are there any questions from school committee at this time?
Are we at comments or questions? You said questions?
No, I didn't know if you had any questions on the public comment.
No.
No, okay. Superintendent notes.
That's it for now, for me.
Okay, thank you. Chrissy, Assistant Superintendent notes.
Am I going to steal anyone's thunder if I talk about the new teacher orientation today?
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to share that we were excited to welcome 6 new educators to the Easton Public Schools today. It was a wonderful event this morning for our new teacher orientation. It was a little modified due to the restrictions that we have, but we were there in person, physically distanced, and heard from Dr. Cabral and Chairwoman DeLuca. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. Kristen Marani is one of our English teachers at Oliver Ames. She is the coordinator of our new teacher induction program, and she is absolutely phenomenal. She actually spent the past few weeks putting together a video of our educators talking about their experiences in Easton and advice for our new teachers. We know that they would have been there. They would have been, those teachers would have been welcoming our new teachers if they could have been, but unfortunately with the physical restrictions, we weren't able to do that. So Kristen was able to think of other opportunities to welcome our staff. So they're excited to begin. They know that they're new teachers along with all of us, because we're all new in this year. And it was great to welcome them. So that's all I have for today. And a special thank you to Kristen Marani for putting that together.
She's phenomenal. She's doing a great job with the program, and we're very pleased with how it's going.
Thank you. School committee notes. Caroline?
I do have a few. I'll try to stay on track. Well, first of all, I wanted to mention, I read a good article by Hiawatha Bray, who's the technology writer for the Boston Globe, has been for a number of years. And he talked a little bit about tips for parents of older students who may be attending school in person at whatever level. And, certainly in hybrid models. And I thought he had some good ideas, but one of them was to purchase a two-way a camera that would send live video feed to the parent's smartphone while the student, because those students typically don't have childcare in the home or don't have someone necessarily staying with them. So for parents who have to work, he recommended purchase of a reasonably priced camera. They have one called the Amazon Blink Mini, which is $35. And as I said, it transmits live video to the smartphone. It's two ways, so parents can just check in with their kids, see how they're doing, see if they have any questions during the day. The other things he suggested were having, kind of set routines for the students, a separate area of the house, of the home, if possible, for them to work remotely. This was obviously specific for students, for parents of students opting for remote.
Also for hybrid on the cohort where they're working from home. It's very important for that as well.
Well, obviously, yeah. Oh, yes, good point. I actually articulated that poorly, sorry. But it also, that he recommended that there be a schedule each day that's updated online, but also ideally, if it's possible, to print a schedule for the student each day, just so that they can make sure that they're kind of on top of everything. The article was on the front page a few days ago. Again, Hiawatha Bray, he's the tech correspondent or writer for the Globe. I do have some more comments about masks. I know that there have been a lot of questions coming in to the school committee, and certainly I'm seeing them on Facebook about masks. We've approved a broad policy. Guidelines are forthcoming. Many more specifics will be provided at some future date quite soon, I suspect. But I just want to reiterate, I know people may be a little tired of hearing this, but there really is no mitigation measure that's more effective in preventing transmission of the virus than masks. So I think it's critical that we accept that even though they may be uncomfortable, they may not be the best way to interact with people, etc., that masks are the key to success, to having a successful opening of schools and possibly even being able to expand that. I know that we talked briefly last time about things like purchasing water bottles with straws so that students can kind of sip away anytime they feel like it without having to actually be in a formal mask break, without having to wait for that. Also, as I mentioned last time, I think it's really important to try to have any kind of mask break for snacks or for any reason outside whenever possible. I personally don't think they really should ever be in the building, but I do recognize that there may be thunderstorms with lightning where it's actually less safe for children to be outside. If it's just raining, I think umbrellas are great. Now, a couple of parents have expressed concern about open windows, the fact that, you know, during seasons where there are lots of allergies, that's a concern. And actually there were a couple of parents who said their children really should not be bound by the mask policy because they have allergies and it's uncomfortable for them to wear masks. I would actually say that arguably a child with allergies is more likely to sneeze and cough, and therefore more likely to place his or her classmates or teachers at risk. And that, you know, I certainly am sympathetic that it might be uncomfortable for a young child to wear a mask, but I don't think that having an allergy should essentially exempt a child from wearing a mask. And I just wanted to put that out there because, as I said, a child who has allergies could actually create a greater risk to their classmates and teachers. We've talked a lot about fomite transmission and, you know, disinfection and cleaning and so on, very important, but I'm not sure people are aware that most epidemiologists at this point believe that fomite transmission might be responsible for as much as 6% of transmission. But as I know Dr. Cabral referenced earlier, the primary mode of transmission is these, the aerosol, the very fine particles, again, masks. The main way that masks are what stops that transmission in their of the aerosols in their tracks.
And the air purifiers.
Well, and the air purifiers are fabulous. In fact, when you were describing that, I thought, you know, the air in the typical classroom might be quite a bit better. The ventilation might be better than it is in many homes. You know, where students may be working remotely. I mean, I think that you've gone to, the district has gone to great lengths to try to provide appropriate ventilation. And the air purifiers were brilliant. So I think I'm very happy about that. Just again, a reminder that the virus resides primarily in the nasal pharynx. Still seeing a lot of people wearing masks below their noses. That really doesn't protect other people at all. So I just want people to know, if you decide to do that, you are effectively saying to people non-verbally that if you're asymptomatic and you feel fine, so you're just assuming you don't have the virus, but you may very well have it, that you don't care if you transmit it to others. I know that sounds a little harsh, but I think some people are simply uninformed. But at this point, I think that the information about not wearing a mask below your nose has been widely disseminated, and I just want to re-emphasize it. Again, being outdoors is certainly safer than being indoors, but the governor's order says that people should wear masks when in public, and that includes outdoors. Now, obviously, if you can maintain quite significant social distancing, I think 6 feet is being considered sort of the minimum at this point. A mask is not as important, but you know, ideally, people are wearing masks when they're outside as well. And Governor Baker, in his COVID update that he gave today, actually talked about significant upticks in some communities that are clearly linked to outdoor events with people not wearing masks. So I know that people are getting a little tired of my perseveration on this issue, but I just wanted to update everybody on my thinking about it. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Michelle?
Just a really quick comment. Another shout out to administrators, the parents, the teachers, Alicia, Chrissy, school committee members who've gone from the bigger overseeing committees are now working in the individual school committees, and the amount of work and effort and I don't think people realize that the bigger overlying things that we've been working on for the last 4 or 5 weeks, that was a lot of work, but now putting it to practice and putting it into motion and figuring out all the little nuances is, I would argue as an educator, is really where it's going to be a tremendous amount of work, even more so than has already been put in. So a shout out to everybody who's participating to that. I, for one, appreciate it, as do many of us.
Can I just want to add to that, if you don't mind, Michelle. I was actually meeting with some administrators today, and they also reiterated that as much as they plan for right now, once we're there in person doing what we're doing, we're going to make adjustments, and that's going to be really critical. As you know, as much as we can plan for now, and planning is great because we're trying to predict every scenario possible, scenarios will come up and adjustments will be made. And they're excited to get started so that we can make the adjustments and we can, you know, have everything in place for everyone. So thank you.
Jackie?
Just tagging on a little bit to what Michelle said, it is an incredible amount of work, and it's been a very unique opportunity to be involved at this level. It's been great to see the attention to detail and the creativity and the hard work of all the teachers and administrators through this process, especially seeing what's going on in other districts. I feel very, very fortunate to have the administrators and teachers and staff that we have here, the level of communication, the amount of communication that's been sent out between the newsletter and the frequently asked questions and the emails and the frequent school committee meetings and all of the other meetings we're all attending, the information sessions. It's there's so much information out there and on the district website that if you have a question and you need information, there are places to go. It's just going to those places or asking those people. And so I just wanted to thank you guys for all of the efforts and time and everything that you've been doing, because we are very lucky to have you here.
Thank you, Jackie. Jen?
Just a quick update. First of all, Caroline, I very much appreciate all the information that you bring, and we're not sick of hearing it. So I appreciate knowing that somebody in the group is doing all of that research and is sharing it with us and with our audience. So no, don't apologize, please, and please keep up that work. The new teacher orientation today was really great. Ms. Marani did a phenomenal job putting together that video. I had a little tear in my eye watching it to see the warmth and welcome and spirit of the teachers who took time to record messages to our news educators in the district was really heartwarming. I do want to share, Teresa Skinner has secured some resources to help with a couple of seminars. So these will be open to all families in the district, not just special services families. And I believe that they will be distributed through the Easton University channel is the intent, so that it gets out to all families. So an announcement will be coming out soon. But there will be, so there's a doctor, I may be mispronouncing her first name, Naomi Turk, and she has been working with a lot of districts on presentations around COVID since this started, and there will be two parts. Part one will be Tuesday, September 1st, and then the second part will be Monday, September 14th. I believe they'll be from maybe 7 to 8:30 p.m. The first seminar is titled End of Summer Thoughts, Where We've Been and Where We Are Headed, Nurturing Social and Emotional Health in the Age of COVID and Beyond. So this will be looking at loss, anxiety, uncertainty, and exploring opportunities for quote unquote realistic joy as we look to build strength, maintain momentum, and prepare to engage at the start of the school year. The second seminar would be Where We Are Now, School's Almost Upon Us, Strategies, Tools, Rituals, and Routines. So this is, again, looking at anxiety and looking for joy through the considerations of routines and rituals connected with the beginning of the school year. So I think that gets back to I think it was Caroline who talked about the article from the Globe with suggestions on practical matters such as schedules and spaces and things like that. So we'll be getting more information on that. So hopefully a lot of people will find that valuable and will be able to attend. Oh, and it's
Thanks,
also
Jen.
open to staff.
Thank you. I do want to comment on the new teacher orientation. 6 new teachers. One is a former student of mine. I think every year I get a former student, so I was very happy to see her. But it was just well done. But it is weird. We're in a weird time, and everybody was, 20 feet apart in the RO cafeteria. But it was very nice, very well done. And we only stayed for the beginning, and then I'm sure they had other things going on during the day. Caroline, I just got a message from my husband that says you should get your pay doubled because of all your research. So we're going to double your pay because of all your
Thank you.
research.
Thank you. And as a math major, you know that the fact that
Well,
we all
this
make
is-
zero
This
times,
is
it could
from
quadruple my
Jacqueline.
pay.
I know.
I know.
Thank you,
That's
you,
very
Caroline.
kind, but he does know
Thank
he's
you.
married to a math major, right?
Yes, all right. Our next meeting will be Thursday, September 3rd, 5 o'clock, Zoom. So if you have agenda items, make sure you get them to me quickly so Lynn can put those on the agenda. I want to thank Joe at ECAT and of course Lynn Souza. And a week from today, our teachers are coming in. So hopefully we can figure things out and get things going in the right direction. At this time, I am going to make a motion to enter into executive session and will not return to open session for the purpose of discussion and strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the Easton Educators Association Unit A. And in my opinion, having this discussion in public would be detrimental to the bargaining position of the school committee. Do I have a second?
Wiseman, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Grants, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, so we'll see everybody September 3rd, and we'll see you girls on the other side.
Thank you.